Part 10. Martial Arts, Become Invincible starting from the full-level magic system. Author, Drunk in March at Westlake. Chapter 91. Mr. Ding, what do you think about this matter? Li Wenbo looked at an old man next to him and asked. The old man sneered disdainfully when he heard this, and said lightly, the 7 Shahs of Mobei are just a small role. Although the name sounds very famous, it is nothing more than that. If I take action, I can easily suppress it. But the guardian behind the 100 households of Jinyue you mentioned is worthy of vigilance. There are guardians, indicating that the inherited sect has extraordinary origins. But it doesn't matter. As long as the leaders of Buddhism and Taoism are not here in person, I have nothing to fear. The old man's tone was full of pride. In his eyes, the 7 evil spirits of Mobei, who were notorious for their evil reputation, were like ants, as if they could be killed easily. He had already raised his status to be on par with the leaders of Buddhism and Taoism. To the extent. You must know that Buddhism and Taoism are the leaders of the righteous path in the world, and they are like leaders. To be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with the leaders of Buddhism and Taoism, one can imagine the strength. And what the old man said is not bragging, just because his name is Ding Xiaotian. He also has another name, Suitu. This name once shocked the martial arts world 30 years ago, and countless famous masters died under the sword of Suitu. Hearing what Ding Xiaotian said, Li Wenbo suddenly felt confident. Got it? Anyone who dares to kill my grandson, Li Wenbo, will pay the price no matter who he is or what his background is. Li Wenbo's eyes were sharp, gloomy, and as deep as a wolf, burning with overwhelming anger, revealing an unconcealed murderous intention, which was horrifying. In the evening, Xiao Wuji went straight to the Su mansion after getting off duty. Uncle. Hello, uncle. Entering the Su mansion, all the servants and maids in the mansion saluted and said hello, with respectful and flattering expressions. Is the uncle here to see the young lady? I'll report it right away. No, I'll go see her myself. Now that Xiao Wuji comes to the Su mansion, he doesn't even need to report. It's just like returning to his own home. In the pavilion next to the lotus pond in the backyard, Su Weiner is embroidering. The maid Xiaolan hurried over, shouting as she ran, Miss, Uncle is here to see you. Real. As soon as Su Weiner heard that Xiao Wuji was coming, her face suddenly lit up and she quickly stood up to greet her. But before she finished speaking, Xiao Wuji had already arrived at the lotus pond. Xiao Lang. Seeing Xiao Wuji, Su Weiner immediately pounced on her. Xiao Wuji picked up Su Weiner and spun her around several times, which made the maid next to her blush. After getting along for a period of time, Su Weiner was no longer shy when facing Xiao Wuji. Got it? Why is Xiao Lang free to come here today? It has been more than 10 days since Xiao Wuji last came to Su mansion. In the past 15 days, Xiao Wuji has been busy monitoring Li mansion every night, looking for opportunities to assassinate Li Lin. Of course, he has no time to come to Li mansion. More than 10 days ago before we met, Su Weiner felt as if it had been more than 10 years, and her longing could not be suppressed. Xiao Wuji scratched Su Weiner's nose and said with a smile, I miss you, so I came to see you. As soon as Su Weiner heard this, her cheeks turned red with embarrassment, making her look even more touching. There is no woman in the world who can resist the love words of her sweetheart, especially in such an ancient dynasty. What's more, Xiao Wuji is from Blue Star, and he is extremely capable at flirting with girls. The existence of full level. By the way, I have a gift for you. As he said that, Xiao Wuji took out the small wooden box from his arms. After opening it, he took out the end of the world. How about it? Is it beautiful? As soon as Su Weiner saw the lotus flower, her eyes started to shine, shining like stars. Su Weiner has used jewelry ranging from 500 to 300 since she was a child. Her father-in-law has also started running a jewelry business in recent years and brought her back there are countless precious jewelry. But Su Weiner has never seen such a beautiful ring. The ring is small and exquisite, shining brightly. Although the petals of the lotus are small, each piece is carefully carved and is even larger than the petals of a real lotus. Beautiful and exquisite. Is this really for me? Su Weiner looked at Xiao Wuji with fiery eyes, and the love in her eyes was like water, as if it was about to overflow. Xiao Wuji smiled and said, "Of course it's for you, don't you like it? If you don't like it, then I will." "No, no, no, I like it very much." Before Xiao Wuji finished speaking, Su Weiner spoke quickly. Seeing that Su Weiner was so careless with teasing, Xiao Wuji burst out laughing. Seeing Xiao Wuji like this, how could Su Weiner not know that he was teasing her? She snorted and patted her gently. Xiao Wuji said, "Xiao Lang, you just love to tease people. Ha 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 ha, you are even cuter like this." Xiao Wuji smiled, then took out the close-up tianya and put it on Su Weiner's finger. "It also has a very beautiful name, So Far Away. You must wear it all the time, it will protect you." When Su Weiner heard her lover say this, her heart became even sweeter. She remembered Xiao Wuji's words deeply in her heart. Moreover, this was something Xiao Wuji gave her. Even if Xiao Wuji didn't say it, Su Weiner would wear it all the time, not even for a moment. "We'll leave." Later, Xiao Wuji and Su Weiner visited the lotus garden hand in hand. Time passed quickly, and in the blink of an eye, the evening glow had enveloped the entire sky. The burning clouds were as red as blood, like a sea of blood spanning the sky. At this time, the maid Xiaolan come to report. "Uncle, miss, it's time for dinner." Xiao Wuji and Su Weiner looked at each other, and they went to the main hall to dine. When the cheap father-in-law heard that Xiao Wuji was coming, he directly prepared a sumptuous dinner and even cooked for Xiao Wuji himself. Su Yu relied on him when he was young. He started in the restaurant business, and his cooking skills are no worse than those of the royal chefs in the palace. Over the years, his business has grown bigger and bigger, and he rarely cooks in person. So I thought it is very rare to have a dinner made by Su Yu himself. Seeing Xiao Wuji leading Su Weiner over, neither Su Yu nor Su Qin felt anything wrong. Su Yu even stroked his beard and laughed, "Ha ha 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 ha, my dear son-in-law, come here quickly." When he saw clearly the brand new Fiio suit Xiao Wuji was wearing, Su Yu was stunned for a moment. "My dear son-in-law, have you been promoted again?" Xiao Wuji nodded and said, "I have made some achievements in the past few days, so your majesty has rewarded me with the title of Deputy Kinhu of the Imperial Guard." Deputy Kinhu, a good husband at such a young age is Deputy Kinhu. Although Su Yu was a little unbelievable, Fiifu would not lie to others, and Xiao Wuji also admitted it himself. "You have to believe it if you don't believe it." Su Yu was extremely shocked, looking at Xiao Wuji as if he were a monster. What kind of son-in-law is he looking for? Isn't this too scary? Although Su Yu has long known that Xiao Wuji has a bright future and that his promotion to Jinyue Kinhu is a sure thing in the future. But he always thought that it would be many years later. After all, Xiao Wuji had just been promoted to the rank of Deputy 100th Household a few days ago. It would have taken a long time to be promoted to the rank of 100th Household. Who would have thought that in just 1 month, Xiao Wuji would be promoted to Deputy 100th Household? If this promotion rate continues, if this goes on, in a few months, Xiao Wuji may be a real Kinhu. How many more years will it take? 1 year is almost enough. My dear son-in-law, you really scared my father-in-law. However, I still want to say one more thing. Although it is good to be promoted, you must still put your own safety first in everything, and do not force yourself to stand out. Don't forget that you are not alone now, there is water waiting for you at home. Su Yu raised his glass and took a sip of wine, and couldn't help but exhort, his words filled with deep concern. Although he didn't know much about Jin Yiwei, he also knew some basic information. Xiao Wuji, such a young deputy Qinhu, are rare in the history of Jin Yiwei. And Xiao Wuji was able to be promoted so quickly, he must have made astonishing achievements. And great achievements often mean great dangers. Xiao Wuji was able to achieve his current status because of his life. On the one hand, Su Yu was happy that his virtuous son-in-law could be promoted step by step and reach the position of a minister, but on the other hand, he was also worried about his safety. The Jin Yiwei licked blood with his knife. After all, he was working with his head in his head. If he is not careful, his life may be no more. Su Weiner next to her was also holding Xiao Wuji's hand tightly, with a worried look on her face. Xiao Wuji comforted Su Weiner softly and said, "It's okay, don't worry." Then he looked at Su Yu and said, "Father-in-law, don't worry. With my martial arts skills, I can more than protect myself. If I really encounter a strong enemy that I can't beat, it will be easy to retreat with my whole body using my Qinggong." Su Yu nodded when he heard this, and felt a little at ease. He had seen Xiao Wuji's Qinggong with his own eyes, and his lightning-like speed was indeed unmatched by others. His mother-in-law, Su Qinqi, said from the side, "Since Jin Yiwei is so dangerous, why don't you just resign? Anyway, my Su family is not short of money, and with Wuji's ability, even if I am not a royal guard, I can still accomplish something." Su Qin accompanied Su Yu to start from scratch, from a small restaurant to the wealthy businessman in Jinling today. She knew that her own skills were more important than the wealth of the family. Xiao Wuji was very powerful, and even if he was not a royal guard, he would be able to stand out sooner or later. In addition, there are people behind him. With the support of the Su family's vast wealth, it will be easier to start a career. In this case, why bother to be the imperial guard who licks blood from the edge of his knife? Su Qin is very satisfied with Xiao Wuji, his son-in-law, and doesn't want to see him die young. Besides, her daughter's heart is now devoted to Xiao Wuji. If Xiao Wuji had any shortcomings, her daughter might not be able to survive. Linyo is good. Teju of the Great Zhou dynasty established the Jinyi guards, which are hereditary. Unless there is blood cut off, otherwise the descendants must have someone to inherit the mantle of the predecessor. In other words, if Xiao Wuji and Su Weiner have children in the future, they must choose someone to inherit Xiao Wuji's identity as a royal guard. This iron rule was established by Teju of the Great Zhou dynasty, which is in order for the Jin Yiwei to continue to grow and not weaken. Teju was well aware of the threat that Jianghu warriors posed to the court, so the existence of the Jin Yiwei was necessary. Everything was to maintain the control of the Zhou dynasty over the world. Okay, let's not talk about this anymore. Xiao Wuji raised his glass to Su Yu and said, "It's a happy event that I was promoted to deputy Qinhu today. What's the point of doing this village if I don't have these? Come, father-in-law and son-in-law, I want to toast you." Su Yu also raised his glass when he saw this, and drank with Xiao Wuji. At the banquet, people were drinking and laughing. Everyone soon forgot about the unpleasantness. When the banquet was over, Xiao Wuji drank his father-in-law to the ground. His face was red, his eyes were hazy, and he couldn't speak clearly. Su Qin patted his forehead helplessly and ordered his servants to help Su Yu back to the room to rest. On the other hand, Xiao Wuji drank more than Su Yu, but he still drank more. He acted like a normal person and was in good spirits. After his father-in-law and mother-in-law left, Xiao Wuji and Su Weiner also went back to their room to rest. Martial arts, become invincible starting from the full-level magic system. Author, Drunk in March at West Lake. Chapter 92. After a night of silence, Xiao Wuji woke up the next day. Xiao Wuji went to Bijinfuzi for duty as usual. This time the guard was even more awed when he saw Xiao Wuji. Because Xiao Wuji is already a Jin Yiwei deputy Qinhu. In the blink of an eye, 7 days passed. It was a calm 7 days, nothing happened. This surprised Xiao Wuji. In the past few nights, Xiao Wuji had been waiting for someone to come and assassinate him every night, but no one showed up. This made Xiao Wuji suspect that there was something wrong with Li Wenbo and Li Dingshan. Your grandson, son, was killed and you didn't take revenge? Although Xiao Wuji handled the scene very cleanly, there is no evidence to prove that Xiao Wuji killed Li Lin. But when did the Li family need evidence to do things? They would rather kill 1,000 by mistake than let one go. That was their style. There was a conflict between Xiao Wuji and Li Lin, and this alone was enough for Li Wenbo to send someone to assassinate him. But who would have thought that no one came after waiting around? What happened to Li Wenbo and his son? Do you want to make a decision and then act? The longer time passes, the more cautious Xiao Wuji becomes. It is better to do things with a plan than to act recklessly. There is no movement in the Li mansion now. It can only be said that Li Wenbo and the others are waiting, brewing a bigger conspiracy. On this day, Xiao Wuji was as usual come to Fuzi, Bijan, for a meal. As soon as you walked into the gate of Genfuzi, you heard a few Jinyaiwei talking in low voices on the roadside. Ah! How is that possible? That's Li Lin, the eldest grandson of the chief minister's family. He has not been to Genfuzi for more than 20 days. If you didn't come, you didn't come. What's the big deal? The chief minister is behind him, and no one dares to care about him. Didn't 727 often come up short in the past? This time is different. Xiao Qi, who was the first to speak, said in a low voice, I heard Xiang Zhaoqi from the 14th team say that Li Lin was probably killed, so he didn't come on duty. Xiang Zhaoqi? Who is that? Xiang Tiogu, the one who claims to be methodical and meticulous in his work, the flag officer of the 14th team, don't you remember? He is Qinhu Li Lin's subordinate. His cousin's brother's cousin's sister is the third concubine of the son of the steward of the Li family. According to his information, there has been a turmoil within the Li mansion recently. Li Lin's death aroused the anger of the chief minister and the minister. I don't know how many people were sent to look for the murderer, but in the end they found nothing. Real. The Jinyi guardsman was so shocked that his eyes popped out. Of course it's true. Who has the courage to kill even Li Lin? Don't die. When he spoke, the Jinyue Zhaoqi looked horrified. Zhaoqi next to him shook his head and said maybe he was forced to panic, otherwise who would go crazy and kill Li Lin? If you ask me, if Li Lin died well, I would have disliked him long ago. He was arrogant and domineering, and committed many evil deeds. He had harmed countless civilians, including many of his fellow Jinyaiwei soldiers. Hush, keep quiet, don't dare to say such nonsense. If word spreads, you will feel better. Ah, yes, you are right, I didn't say anything just now, you didn't hear anything. Xiao Wuji passed by and heard the conversation of several people clearly. Can the news finally be hidden? There was a sneer on the corner of Xiao Wuji's mouth. No one could have imagined that the murderer of Li Lin was right under their noses. Walking on the road to Genfuzi, Xiao Wuji kept hearing people talking about Li Lin's murder. It can be seen that there are not a few people who know about this matter. Now these people are just hiding in the corner and whispering, but it will not be long before the news spreads throughout Genfuzi, and then spreads throughout Jinling City. Paper cannot contain the fire. Li Lin's death was a big event, enough to shock the entire Jinling City. It was impossible to keep it a secret forever. Xiao Qinhu, Yuan Qinhu invites you. When Xiao Wuji arrived at the Qinhu office, a uniformed guard general hurried over and informed him respectfully. New. Xiao Wuji nodded slightly and came to the central hall of Qinhuizhuo. Yuan Xiong turned around and looked at Xiao Wuji without saying a word, but his eyes were a little strange. Xiao Wuji smiled and asked, is there anything strange about my subordinates? Sir, you want to look at your subordinates with such strange eyes. UN. Xiang was silent for a moment and then asked, have you heard about Li Lin's death, Xiao? Wuji nodded, I just heard that people are talking about it everywhere in Fuzi, Bijan. Yuan Xiang asked again, what do you think about this? Xiao Wuji said, I see with my eyes Yuan. Xiang twitched the corner of his mouth and rolled his eyes, I'm not kidding you. Xiao Wuji shrugged his shoulders and said with a smile, I'm not kidding, I'm just looking with my eyes. Seeing Yuan Xiang's face darken, Xiao Wuji spoke again, Li Lin is dead if he dies, and it has nothing to do with me. What can I say? There are so many people dying every day in Bijan Fuzi, what's the fuss about? Yuan. Xiang raised his head and his eyes widened, that's Li Lin, Li Wenbo's eldest grandson. He's not a cat or a dog. You are the only one who dares to say that there is nothing to make a fuss about, Xiao. Wuji spread his hands and said, it's really nothing to make a fuss about. I'm not familiar with him, so I'm still a little uncomfortable with him. To put it bluntly, is it none of my business whether he dies or not? It would be a good thing for me to die, so as not to attract people's jealousy. Yuan Xiang took a deep look at Xiao Wuji and asked in a low voice, tell me the truth, does this matter have anything to do with you? Yuan Xiang really has to be suspicious. He just told Xiao Wuji not long ago that Li Linji hated him and might plot against him. Then Li Lin died within a few days. How could there be such a coincidence in the world? What happened? Xiao Wuji quickly waved his hands and denied it. Master Qinhu, you can't say this nonsense. What does Li Lin's death have to do with me? There are so many people in the world who hate the Li family, and there are so many people who want to kill Li Lin. Where is my turn? Aged. Who knows which enemy of the Li family did it? Besides, I don't have the ability to kill Li Lin. When Yuan Xiang heard this, he also nodded in his heart, feeling that what Xiao Wuji said made sense. Although Xiao Wuji's strength was good, he was obviously not good enough to kill Li Lin, and the possibility was slim. Maybe it was really an enemy of the Li family who did it? Xiao Wuji looking at Yuan Xiang, he asked, is this why your excellency came to me today? Of course not. Yuan Xiang sat back on his chair, took a sip from his teacup, and asked, do you know what your majesty is most concerned about today? Xiao Wuji pretended to be confused, thought for a while, and gave the standard answer, it should be the traces of the demon sex rebels, the location of the demon sex lair, the conflicts on the border of Bian, the corrupt officials in the court, and people's livelihood. Yuan Xiang looked directly at Xiao Wuji and said calmly, I'll give you a chance to answer again. Looking at Yuan Xiang's half-smiling face and his who are you trying to fool expression, Xiao Wuji had no choice but to tell a well-known answer, Your Majesty most desires to become an immortal and travel with the immortals in the sky. Sky, immortality. Well said. Yuan Xiang took a sip of tea and nodded slightly. The demon sex rebels are restrained and suppressed by Jinyue, Liamen, and Dongchang, the conflict with Bian is controlled by the border defense generals, and there will be no trouble. As for the corrupt officials in the court and the people's livelihood, it is even more like a scabies disease, not enough for consideration. The only thing your majesty really cares about is eternal life. Xiao Wuji nodded slightly and asked, so, is this mission related to His Majesty the Emperor? Xiao Wuji couldn't help but feel that Yuan Xiang was too kind to him, which was a bit unusual. All the tasks related to the Emperor were fat men, and hundreds of thousands of households would break their heads to rob him, but it always falls on Xiao Wuji's head. He is determined to make others jealous of Xiao Wuji. Yuan Xiang looked at Xiao Wuji and said, this mission may be a bit difficult. If you refuse, I won't force it, I will find someone else. Need not. Xiao Wuji said with a smile, wealth and wealth are found in danger. The higher the difficulty, the greater the opportunity. I also want to get promoted and make a fortune, take better elixirs, and practice more advanced martial arts. Now that the opportunity has come, How can I miss it? Lord Sun who just said so. Xiao Wuji speaks so openly. When others are officials, they always look for a fig leaf to cover up, saying what they say is to speak for the people, to establish a heart for the world, to inherit the unique knowledge of the past saints, and to create peace for all generations. But Xiao Wuji doesn't bother to cover up at all. I am a royal guard. Just to get promoted and make a fortune. Yuan Xiong had long been accustomed to Xiao Wuji's magnanimity, so he didn't take it to heart. He looked at Xiao Wuji and asked, "Have you heard of Wuxia Villa?" "Heard about it?" Xiao Wuji nodded slightly. Wuxia Villa is located in Tongzhou, backed by the Kangxia Mountains. It is the largest pharmacy in Tongzhou. 60 years ago, the owner of Wuxia Villa, Yun Feiyang, relied on the 7, 7, and 49 styles of Wuxia swordsmanship to defeat invincible opponents in Tongzhou. He was a swordsman master who could rival the great master. Under the leadership of Yun Feiyang, the strength of Wuxia Villa reached its peak, and it was considered a dominant force in the world at that time. It's a pity that Yun Feiyang died so suddenly, and Wuxia Villa has no successors, and it is gradually declining. Even the family's Wuxia swordsmanship only has rudimentary moves, and it no longer has the power it had 60 years ago. In the past 30 years, Wuxia Villa has rarely intervened in the affairs of the world, and has only been engaged in the business of medicinal materials. Because it is backed by the Kangxia Mountains and has sufficient sources of medicinal materials, Wuxia Villa's medicinal material business is getting bigger and bigger, and it is somewhat prosperous. You are right. Yuan Xiong nodded and said, "The place you want to go to this time is Wuxia Villa." The owner of Wuxia Villa, Yun Pokiu, found a 300-year-old blood ginseng in the Kangxia Mountains a few days ago. They were afraid that the blood ginseng would bring disaster, so they wanted to offer the blood ginseng to His Majesty. 300 years of blood ginseng. Yes, blood ginseng is a variant of ginseng. It is unique and very rare. It can be said to be a rare find in a century. Not only can it detoxify, treat internal injuries, and improve one's physical strength, but if combined with elixirs to make elixirs, it can also increase longevity. Moreover, what was born this time was a 300-year-old blood ginseng, which has great medicinal properties and is a rare treasure. Xiao Wuji was a little shocked. He didn't expect that what he was escorting this time was such a treasure. It can increase longevity. You can imagine how much Emperor Jingtai coveted it. Sometimes when a blood ginseng that is more than 50 years old appears, countless people are competing for it, let alone one that is 300 years old. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Martial arts, become invincible starting from the full level magic system. Author, Drunk in March at West Lake. Chapter 93. Sometimes a blood ginseng that is over 50 years old will be scrambled by countless people, let alone one that is 300 years old. If this news is leaked, I don't know how many martial arts masters will be attracted. No wonder Yuan Xiong said this mission might be a little difficult. You don't need to be too nervous. Yuan Xiong looked at Xiao Wuji and said the matter of blood ginseng is still top secret, and only a few people know about it. As long as the information is not leaked, you can easily complete this mission. The reason why I sent you there was to deceive others. After all, you are young, not well known, and will not draw attention to yourself. Xiao Wuji nodded inwardly, understanding what Yuan Xiong meant. Grand Master Qinhu of the Jinyue is quite famous in the world. Once he appears, he will definitely attract the attention of many people in the world. In this way, the blood ginseng may be exposed. It's just right to send Xiao Wuji, a deputy Qinhu who is not very famous but has high strength. In Yuan Xiong's view, Xiao Wuji has a profound inheritance and has practiced many powerful magic skills. He can fight across levels and his combat power is comparable to that of a grandmaster. Sending Xiao Wuji is no different from sending a grandmaster to Qinhu. At this moment, the electronic sound of the system sounded in Xiao Wuji's mind. Ding, the host triggers a mission, escort blood ginseng. Ask the host to safely return the blood ginseng from Wuxia Villa to Jinling City. Mission reward, full level disguise. Xiao Wuji's eyes lit up when he saw the reward for this mission. Xiao Wuji has been looking forward to the martial art of disguise for a long time. This is a necessary magic skill for killing people, stealing goods, and hiding their identity. Xiao Wuji has always wanted to create a martial art similar to Xiao Wuji. A completely separate vest makes it easier to do some things. With the full level of disguise, there will be no more flaws. At this time, Yuan Xiong looked at Xiao Wuji and said, since you agree, let's set off immediately, leave quickly, and come back quickly, otherwise things will change if you are late. Xiao Wuji cupped his hands and said, I obey. Xiao Wuji left Qinhu Zhongtang and went directly to Fuzi stables in Beijing, where he chose a sweat-blooded horse specially designed for Qinhu. Riding on the sweat-blooded horse, Xiao Wuji left Jinling City and headed towards Tongzhou. Just when Xiao Wuji left Jinling City, a carrier pigeon flew into the Li mansion and landed in the hands of the chief assistant Li Wenbo. Li Wenbo took the secret message from the carrier pigeon's foot and glanced at it. A cold light flashed in his eyes. Go ahead, the target has left the city, be sure to take his head. Li Wenbo said lightly. There was no one behind him, but there was a sound. Subordinates obey. Li Wenbo crushed the secret letter into pieces, put his hands behind his back and looked at the sky in front of him. His eyes were deep, and he regained his composure. Just wait, Linur, that humble Behu will go down to accompany you soon. There are also the 7 evils of Mobei. Grandpa will also send them down to bury you with you. Up to now, Li Wenbo still doesn't know that the 7 Shahs of Mobei are dead. The 7 Shahs of Mobei who are suffering in hell can't imagine that even though they are already dead, there are still people who want to kill them. If he knew what Li Wenbo was thinking, he would probably be angry. Gotta crawl back to earth from hell. Father, Xiao Wuji has a grandmaster level protector behind him. Those people we send out may not be able to kill him, right? Li Dingshan came behind Li Wenbo and asked doubtfully. A grandmaster level protector? How do you know for sure? Do you have evidence? Li Wenbo asked instead. Li Dingshan said Linur once sent Iron Claw Feiying and Fuxian Sword Sect Moyun to kill Xiao Wuji, but they all failed in the end. Isn't this enough to prove that Xiao Wuji has the protection of a great master behind him? Li Wenbo sneered and said that can only prove that the 2 of them are useless. They can't help Xiao Wuji. Other than that, it can't prove anything. Is it impossible that Xiao Wuji killed the 2 of them with his own hands? How can this be? Li Dingshan couldn't believe it. Then is Xiao Wuji a great master in his own right? But how is this possible? Is he still that young? How could he be a great master? There is absolutely no such monster in this world. Li Wenbo said, I'm not sure whether he is a great master or not. The only thing I am sure of is that he is stronger than those 2 trashes. Besides, this operation is just a test. Test? Not an assassination. Li Dingshan was a little confused. In terms of strategy, he was still far behind Li Wenbo and couldn't keep up with Li Wenbo's pace. Li Wenbo glanced at Li Dingshan and said solemnly, it's both a test and an assassination. If Xiao Wuji's strength is only the level he has shown so far, then he will die during this trip. If there is really a protector behind him, then his true identity will be revealed to the world. As long as he reveals his identity and stands in the open, we can formulate corresponding countermeasures based on his strength and background. Li Dingshan asked again, what if Xiao Wuji is really a great master as his father guessed? Then we have to figure it out slowly. Li Wenbo said with a heavy tone. Why? Wouldn't it be enough for my father to ask Mr. Ding to take action? Li Dingshan said bitterly, with Mr. Ding's strength, Even if Xiao Wuji is really a great master, there will be no way to survive. When he thought that his son might have been killed by Xiao Wuji, Li Dingshan became furious. He wanted to tear out Xiao Wuji's skin and cut his body into thousands of pieces. Even if Xiao Wuji did not kill him, this matter was caused by Xiao Wuji. It's not that easy. Li Wenbo looked into the distance and said in a serious tone, every great master is extremely difficult to kill. If you want to escape, even Ding Xiaotian may not be able to succeed. Moreover, Xiao Wuji himself was very good at Qinggong. Didn't he first become famous for using Qinggong to catch flower-picking thieves? If Xiao Wuji is forced to jump over the wall and hide in the dark, then we will be the ones who are passive. Now Xiao Wuji is in the light and we are in the dark, the initiative is in our hands, this advantage must not be given up. According to what my father said, if Xiao Wuji is really a great master, wouldn't there be nothing we can do against him? Is this the end of Linner's hatred? Li Dingshan was unwilling and angry. Li Wenbo said gloomily, forget it? How could it be forgotten? If you kill my grandson, Li's family, no matter if he is a great master, I will still let him die without a complete body. Li Dingshan's eyes lit up, father already has a solution. Li Wenbo said, don't forget, the reason why our Li family is what it is today is not relying on strong force, but power. To kill someone, you don't have to be stronger than him. Power is the most powerful killing weapon in the world. Li Dingshan instantly understood that his father was trying to use power to suppress others. Think about it, so what if Xiao Wuji is the Grand Master? No matter how strong he is, can he be stronger than the Zhou court? If force doesn't work, then use power. As long as Xiao Wuji is still in the territory of the great Zhou dynasty, he cannot escape. With the power and position of the Li family, there are many ways to kill him. If it doesn't work once, then twice, if it doesn't work twice, then 3 times. One day, sooner or later, Xiao Wuji will die in their hands. Of course, the premise of all this is that Xiao Wuji can come back alive from this mission. Also, have you found the 7 Shas of Mobei that I asked you to find? Li Wenbo looked at Li Dingshan and said, Xiao Wuji is just one of the suspects, and the 7 Shas of Mobei cannot be let go either. Sorry father, the son was incompetent and couldn't find them. Li Dingshan replied with an ugly face. Huh, trash, tell me what else you can do. Li Wenbo couldn't help scolding. Neither of them knew that the 7 Shas of Mobei had died long ago and their ashes were scattered. Even if they turned the Zhou dynasty upside down, they would not be able to find the 7 Shas of Mobei. From then on, the road from Jinling City to Tongzhou is not close. If he rides a sweaty horse and travels day and night without stopping, he can arrive within 5 days at the fastest speed. But Xiao Wuji was obviously not in a hurry. He traveled as fast as he could and never walked at night. So in the past 7 days, Xiao Wuji only walked half of the way. The journey was uneventful for 7 days. Occasionally, he encountered a few bandits who blocked the road and robbed him. What big thing happened? Those bandits who blocked the road naturally became Xiao Wuji's victims, and they also provided Xiao Wuji with hundreds of taels of silver. It was a habit to kill people and touch corpses, and mosquitoes were still meat no matter how small they were. Xiao Wuji never picky. However, Xiao Wuji did not relax his vigilance because of this, because as soon as he left Jinling City, Xiao Wuji sensed a vague murderous intention. Although the murderous intention did not appear at the moment, as long as the time comes, he will definitely appear. Xiao Wuji has been waiting for the secret killer to show up. Now the competition is who is more patient. As the saying goes, good hunters often appear in the form of prey. In the evening of this day, Xiao Wuji rode his horse. We arrived at the foot of a barren mountain. This place was deserted and inaccessible. There are no inns for more than 10 miles to the left and right, but it is the only way to Tongzhou. Xiao Wuji originally wanted to walk through this land at night, but unexpectedly a heavy downpour came just as he expected. During the rainy season, God changes his face faster than a woman. There was really no other way, so Xiao Wuji could only find a dilapidated temple to live in. The ruined temple has been in disrepair for a long time, and the roof is full of holes. The left side has even collapsed in half, and broken tiles are everywhere. Xiao Wuji entered the ruined temple and saw that the statue of the general enshrined in the temple was also damaged, with only half of its head left. However, the spear held in the hand of the statue was still majestic. This is not a mountain temple, but a general temple. It is said that in the late years of the previous dynasty, this place was a battlefield. The army of the Zhou dynasty and the army of the previous dynasty launched a fierce and bloody battle here. In that battle, corpses piled up like mountains and blood flowed into rivers. Both sides suffered heavy casualties, with more than 200,000 soldiers killed in the battle. After the establishment of the Zhou dynasty, this land began to be haunted. It is said that because too many people have died, those lonely ghosts have nowhere to go and have been wandering in this land. Those evil ghosts not only fought each other during life, but also turned into evil ghosts after death and continued to fight. Anyone who passes by this land will be haunted by evil spirits and eventually die miserably. The hauntings got worse and worse, and no one dared to approach this area again. The local magistrate had no choice but to build the general temple here to suppress the ghosts here. Coincidentally, after the general temple was built, it was no longer haunted. As time passed, the haunting legend was gradually forgotten, and the general temple became abandoned. Naturally, Xiao Wuji didn't believe in the ghost story. The theory of ghosts and gods was just the ghosts of people's hearts. Unless the world that Xiao Wuji travels through is a world of immortals and heroes, where ghosts and gods exist. But for now, this is just a world of high martial arts, and there are no ghosts or gods. Martial arts, become invincible starting from the full-level magic system. Author, Drunk in March at West Lake. Chapter 94. Although the magical skills spread in the world have various miraculous qualities and can make people stay young forever and even live a long life, they have nothing to do with ghosts and gods after all. According to Xiao Wuji's knowledge from Jinyi Wei's archives, the longest lifespan in the world currently only lived for more than 300 years. That is a strong man who unites nature and man. Why is there still a coffin? Xiao Wuji suddenly noticed that there were 7 or 8 coffins stacked behind the general's statue. These coffins were covered with dust. It was obvious that no one had moved them for a long time. Is this treating Jiangjun Temple as a charity village? Xiao Wuji shook his head and laughed. The so-called yizhuang is generally used to store coffins. Some people who die in a foreign land and want to return to their roots often ask someone to send a message back to their hometown before they die. Or they ask someone to send a message. Send the message back to your hometown, ask your relatives to come and collect the body, and then take the body back to your hometown for burial. However, before the relatives arrive, the body cannot be buried or left randomly, so it will be temporarily stored in the charity village. It is just a letter sent back to your hometown. Often there is no response. Some of the coffins are sent to the wrong person or not delivered, or the relatives of the deceased find it troublesome and do not want to come all the way to collect the body of a dead person. Therefore, these coffins stored in the charity will remain unclaimed. And then stayed in the yizhuang. As time went by, more and more coffins in the yizhuang would accumulate. Presumably, the general temple was also used as a yizhuang, but it took too long. Chuyai's huang has been abandoned. Seeing these coffins, Xiao Wuji suddenly had an infinite feeling. The world's turmoil has surpassed my generation, and the years have rushed me as soon as I entered the world. The emperor's hegemony talked and laughed, and he was drunk in life. He raised his sword and waved across the Qi. After the rain, bones are as white as mountains and birds start to fly. The world is like a tide and people are like water. Only a few people return to the rivers and lakes. In this rivers and lakes where human life is like grass and grass, I don't know how many people have died in a foreign land, or even have no bones left. These people can survive after death. It is enough to have a coffin to hide, but more people don't even have coffins after death, and are abandoned directly in the wilderness, allowing wild dogs and wolves to gnaw on their bodies. Those who died in Xiao Wuji's hands were even worse. It was directly photographed into blood mist, leaving no trace. There were coffins piled up in the general temple. It was pouring rain outside, lightning and thunder, and strong winds howling, making the damaged general temple look even more eerie and terrifying. But Xiao Wuji was not afraid at all. He immediately took up residence in the general temple. Xiao Wuji cleared a clean place, lit a fire, roasted the dried meat he bought, and ate until he was full. When he was full and drunk, the sky outside it has become completely dark. Except for the occasional flash of lightning, bringing a little light, there is only endless darkness. Woo! 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 Suddenly several wolf howls sounded, which seemed more penetrating in the dark night. Wild mountain wild wolf, ruined temple coffins, haunted legends, thundering and rainy nights. It can be said that it is a dark and windy night, a day of murder and arson. Xiao Wuji couldn't help but feel a little funny. Usually in this kind of situation, someone will be killed soon. I wonder when those people will take action. Xiao Wuji suddenly thought of the murderous intention hidden in the dark, and actually felt a little expectant. Tonight is a good time to kill. If Xiao Wuji were a killer, he would choose to do it tonight. It is impossible to sleep, and a strong enemy is at your side. Xiao Wuji couldn't sleep at all. Sitting cross-legged on the ground, Xiao Wuji closed his eyes and circulated his skills. The 9 Yang True Qi brought by the full-level 9 Yang divine skill circulated in the 8 extraordinary meridians. Every time it circulated for a week, Xiao Wuji felt that his internal skills were improved. 1 point increased. Although overall, this increase is very small and can almost be ignored. But the cultivation of internal strength is like this. It relies on accumulation over time, and the accumulation of sand becomes a mountain. Phew! It's late at night, the wind is blowing hard outside, and it's raining. The momentum became more intense, and the lightning became more intense. Suddenly, Xiao Wuji's ears twitched, and he suddenly opened his eyes. There was a light flashing in his eyes, like 2 stars in the dark night, shining brightly. Xiao Wuji's hearing was sharp. Clearly heard the sound of horse hoof beats from the sound of wind, rain, lightning, and thunder. Sure enough, in just a few breaths, the sound of horse hoof beats came to the door of the ruined temple. With a neighing sound, the sound of horse hoof beats suddenly stopped, and then a woman's voice sounded. "Senior brother, this ruined temple is so dilapidated and is still in a barren mountain area. Could it be haunted? I heard that this place was haunted a long time ago and many people died. Let's find another place to spend the night." The woman's voice sounded a little uneasy and scared. "It's okay, junior sister, your senior brother is here and he will protect you." The man's voice sounded, his tone was calm and sonorous. "The so-called ghosts are all lies. How can there be ghosts in this world? We, martial arts practitioners, travel the world with our swords. As long as you have a sword in your hand and a righteous mind, you will be able to avoid all dangers and be fearless. Even if there is a real attack from a ghost, you can still kill it with your sword. Wow, senior brother, you are so handsome and awesome." The junior sister's adoring voice sounded. "Ha ha ha, wherever, these are all taught to me by master." The senior brother's voice seemed a little embarrassed. As the voice got closer and closer, 2 people, a man and a woman, walked into the general temple. The 2 senior brothers and sisters were not too old. The senior brother was about 24 or 5 years old, and the junior sister was about they were only 20 years old. Neither the senior brother nor the junior sister looked handsome, they could only be described as passable, but their eyes were very smart. After the two entered the general temple, they took a closer look, and immediately met Xiao Wuji's eyes. They saw Xiao Wuji's eyes. Wuji had no expression on his face, holding the snow-drinking crazy sword, sitting cross-legged on the ground. A pair of cold eyes stared at them, and a sense of oppression came over them. When the brother and sister saw Xiao Wuji, they immediately put their hands on the sword on the handle. He put on a fighting posture, showing a look of alert. The senior brother took half a step forward without leaving any trace, and protected half of the junior sister's body behind him. When going out, you must be on guard against others. You must always be alert and ready to fight. Fighting. Although the man and the woman are young, their fighting spirit is really not weak. The air suddenly became quiet, and Xiao Wuji and the three people stared at each other with big eyes. No one said anything. Suddenly, the fire in front of Xiao Wuji crackled, and a ball of sparks burst out. Seeing that Xiao Wuji had no intention of harming others, the man finally put down his guard and clasped his fists at Xiao Wuji. Said, "Those who are on the road are suddenly hit by a heavy rain, and it is really helpless to take shelter here. May I ask, brother, if it can be convenient? Let my brother and sister take shelter from the heavy rain. Of course, if we disturb you, the two brothers and sisters are willing to leave immediately. There are many inconveniences for people in the world, especially in this situation. It is convenient for others and for yourself." Xiao Wuji is not someone who is looking for trouble, so he said calmly, "This general temple is not my place. What do you think? Just stay, don't ask me. As long as you are not afraid of ghosts here or the coffins behind the general statue, you can live wherever you like." As soon as the words "death in a coffin" were uttered, the young junior sister was immediately startled and clutched her senior brother's sleeves tightly. "Brother, let's find another place to spend the night. This place is really not clean." The senior brother smiled bitterly and said, "Junior sister, how long has it been since this happened? How can I still choose? There is no village in front of this place, no shop in back, and there is no place to take shelter from the rain except this ruined temple. Junior sister, just make do with it tonight. As long as senior brother is here, nothing will happen. 0. After hearing what the senior brother said, the junior sister had no choice but to agree, even though she was scared. He just kept holding on to his senior brother's sleeves, not daring to take a step away from him. The senior brother enjoyed this feeling very much and couldn't help but smile at the corner of his mouth. Then the senior brother clasped his fists at Xiao Wuji and said, "Thank you, Your Excellency." Xiao Wuji said calmly, "No need." The two entered the general temple, cleared a clean area on the other side, and lit a fire. "Junior sister, you first use your power to drive away the cold, and I will protect you," senior brother said to junior sister. "Thank you, brother." The junior sister smiled, her eyes swept over the coffin behind the general's statue, and a trace of uneasiness flashed on her face. Seeing her senior brother protecting her, she felt relieved, sat cross-legged, silently exercised her internal energy, and began to use her energy to ward off the cold. Seeing the true energy emerging from her body, it was obvious that she had already set foot on the innate. Xiao Wuji glanced at it lightly and looked away, without paying much attention to it. Although innate in the age of 20 is rare, it is not impossible. As long as one comes from a well-known family, there will be a few sects in each generation. Judging from the behavior, demeanor, dialogue, and martial arts skills of these two people, they are very similar to elite disciples who came from the Jianghu sects. All major sects will be in the right place. The opportunity will send the disciples out to experience, so that they can experience the dangers of the world. The intrigues, fighting, betrayal, and competition for interests can all make people grow quickly. If they can survive, not only will their martial arts skills improve, but their state of mind will also improve. More complete. As for those who died, I can only blame them for being too weak and unable to adapt to the world. The world is dangerous, and truly strong people can never be cultivated in the greenhouse. When the junior sister was using her skills to drive away the cold, the senior brother, his eyes would glance over Xiaoji from time to time, seeming a little wary. But this was the instinct of a person walking in the world, and Xiaoji didn't care. I am Ling Chenfeng of Xixiamen. I dare to ask my brother your name. At this time, senior brother took the initiative to talk to Xiaoji. Xixia clan, one of the great righteous sects in the world, is quite famous, and Xiaoji has also heard about it. Most of the disciples of Xixia clan have good conduct, and the current head of Xixia clan and Jin Yiwei also had some friendship. Disciple Shi 5.2 Chang and Jin Yiwei teamed up to capture the Zhongyang thief. Seeing Ling Chenfeng Dao's appearance, Xiaoji did not relax his vigilance. He just glanced at him and said lightly, I have no name. Call me just Nameless. Ling Chenfeng's mouth twitched, a little dumbfounded. Although he had thought that Xiaoji would deal with him, there was a high possibility that he would give him a false name to deceive him. After all, when you go out, you must be on guard against others, and it is reasonable to do so. But he never expected that Xiaoji would deal with him so perfunctorily. Wuxia, he didn't even bother to give him a fake name. Brother, what a good name. Ling Chenfeng said with a dry smile, turned around and said nothing. He could see that Xiaoji didn't want to talk to him. In this case, Ling Chenfeng didn't want to be hot-tempered and cold-hearted. Xiaoji looked outside the temple. After a quick glance, he suddenly said, you should be more careful tonight. When Ling Chenfeng heard what Xiaoji said, he was stunned for a moment and asked, brother, what does this mean? Xiaoji shook his head, it's not interesting. Just think I'm talking nonsense. It's up to you whether you want to or not. After saying that, Xiaoji closed his eyes and rested his mind. No matter how much Ling Chenfeng shouted, he ignored him. Although Ling Chenfeng felt a little strange, he still kept a cautious eye in his heart and became more wary of the surrounding people. It was heavy. From the beginning to the end, his hand never left the hilt of the sword. Martial arts, become invincible starting from the full-level magic system. Author, Drunk in March at Westlake. Chapter 95. Time passed quickly, and the rain outside the general temple became heavier and heavier, and the strong wind blew loudly. A crooked-necked tree in front of the temple was so bent by the wind that it was almost parallel to the ground. But this old tree was very resilient and managed to hold on without breaking. Boom! Thunder exploded in the sky, and a bolt of lightning flashed across the horizon, bringing with it a moment of light. The electric light illuminated the three people in the general temple, and Xiaoji could be seen closing his eyes and concentrating, with a calm expression. The senior brother was holding the sword in his hand, looking a little uneasy. He kept holding on to his senior brother's sleeve. Squeak! 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 A slight friction sound suddenly sounded in the ruined temple, but it was covered up by the sound of wind and rain, and no one noticed it at all. Just behind the general's statue, among the 7 or 8 coffins, the lid of one of them suddenly moved. There was no sound, as if someone was pushing inside the coffin. There was a slight crack in the coffin lid. Immediately afterwards, one was covered with folds, a skinny palm covered with sharp black nails stretched out from the coffin. Not only were the nails on the palm black, but the skin was also black, and it was also covered with strange black spots, as if it had been soaked in venom for many years, almost exactly like the zombies in the novels about monsters. The 5 fingers on the palm moved, and the sharp nails shone with a cold light, silently grabbing at the back of the little junior sister's neck. The little junior sister didn't know anything at the moment. She only stared at the outside of the temple, or glanced at Xiaoji from the corner of her eyes, not realizing that 06's fatal murderous intention came from behind. Just when the nails of the thin hand were about to pierce into the junior sister's neck, Kang Lang heard the sound of a sharp sword being unsheathed, and a flash of sword light flew across the void, lighting up the dark ruined temple. The sword roared with endless killing intent and struck hard on the thin palm, immediately splitting the palm crookedly. That's right, it's just a split. The skinny palm looked as skinny as firewood, as if it would shatter if touched, but in fact it was stronger than gold and iron, and could not be damaged by a sword. Ling Chenfeng struck out with his sword boldly, and his innate true energy exploded. Not only did it not break the fur on his palm, but instead it caused a large amount of sparks to fly. Junior sister, be careful, retreat quickly. Ling Chenfeng saw that the move didn't work, and his expression suddenly changed. He quickly grabbed his junior sister and retreated quickly. With just a tip of his toes, he retreated 2 feet away. But the junior sister has not come back to her senses yet, but has a dull look on her face. Her face turned pale. After she came to her senses, the junior sister was filled with fear. She only knew that if the senior brother hadn't taken action just now, she would have been a corpse at this moment. Compared with Ling Chenfeng, who was experienced and had clean attacks, this junior sister was like a newcomer. A novice in the world of martial arts with no experience at all. Although he has gained some innate skills, he can't display even 30% of his power when facing danger. He is not even as good as a top-notch warrior who has been walking darts all year round. Flowers in the greenhouse. This kind of flower is obviously in the greenhouse. Flowers. You pretend to be a ghost, you stab someone in the dark, who are you? Why did you attack my junior sister for no reason? Get out. Ling Chenfeng protected his junior sister behind him and shouted angrily at the coffin. He slashed with his sword, and a stream of true sword energy flew towards the coffin. And with just a light grasp of the skinny palm, he lifted the sword. She was caught in the palm of his hand and crushed, and then his palm was withdrawn into the coffin like lightning. Immediately, a cold and weird smile came from the coffin. What a move to fly together, boy. Gofeng Luokan's sword skills are well practiced. It's a pity that the internal strength is a bit lacking, and it's not good enough in front of me. As soon as the words fell, the coffin board suddenly flipped up. During the flip, the thick true energy was wrapped around it. Under the impact of the true energy, it was like a sharp arrow that came off the string, and shot towards the two brothers and sisters. The coffin board flew away from the two of them. He passed through the middle and hit the crooked neck tree outside the door. There was only a loud bang, the crooked neck tree broke, and the coffin board was also torn apart. The power of this hand alone was beyond Ling Chenfeng's. How much was that sword just now? Who are you? The junior sister has also unsheathed her sword at this moment, but she is hiding behind her senior brother, and the hand holding the sword keeps shaking. The sword in her hand is worse than a fire stick. GGG. The cold and strange laughter sounded again, and a figure suddenly stood up from the coffin. He didn't lift his upper body first, and then slowly stood up, but his whole body stood up straight like a zombie. That was the weird man with disheveled hair. His clothes were torn and dirty, and his whole body exuded a corpse odor. If he hadn't spoken just now, he would be almost indistinguishable from a zombie. GGG, the two juniors of Wuxia clan, I and Wuxia clan are not in conflict with each other. We have no grievances and no enmity. I don't want to embarrass you. If you want to blame, it's because you went to the wrong place tonight and got in my eyes, so I can only send you to hell. While the weirdo was talking, there was a faint sound of ghosts crying and wolves howling, echoing around, as if they were everywhere. Wrong place. Ling Chenfeng's eyes flashed, and he glanced at Xiao Wuji, who was still calmly warming himself up, and understood instantly. The target of this weirdo was not them, but Xiao Wuji. At this moment, he finally understood why Xiao Wuji had warned him to be careful before. It turns out he is being hunted. This is really a disaster. Ling Chenfeng smiled bitterly in his heart, raised his hands to the weird man and said, "Senior, since we have no enmity, I am willing to leave immediately. Please show mercy to me. Walk." After saying that, Ling Chenfeng pulled his junior sister to leave. "Walk. Where else can you go? Now that you are here, please stay." The weirdo Jija smiled and waved his palm, and the sound of ghosts crying and wolf howling suddenly sounded. A large piece of black true energy burst out, forming a skull and flying towards Ling Chenfeng and the two. Seeing this move, Xiao Wuji's eyes suddenly revealed Jing Guang has already guessed the true identity of this weirdo. Although Ling Chenfeng pretended to leave, he was actually always wary of the weirdo behind him. So the moment the weirdo made his move, he turned around to face the enemy. The long sword in his hand emitted a misty sword light, and with just one stroke, several sword energy flew out and collided with the skull. This is Wuxia Sex Gufeng Luokan sword technique, ranking among he is the top of the 6th grade and has a certain reputation in the world. Unfortunately, Ling Chenfeng's internal strength is not strong enough to exert the strongest power of Gufeng Luokan's swordsmanship. It is obviously not enough to face this weirdo. Just one contact, several sword rays it collapsed at the first touch. The skull transformed by the true essence did not stop, and hit Ling Chenfeng in the chest, knocking him away. Although Ling Chenfeng turned back to block with his long sword in time, which offset part of the damage, he was still seriously injured. He vomited blood in mid-air. When he landed, his face was pale, and 70% of his 100% combat power had been reduced. With just one move, Ling Chenfeng was defeated miserably. "Senior brother, how are you?" Junior sister saw Ling Chenfeng injured and fell to the ground, and quickly went up to help him, with a distressed expression on her face. She looked at the fearful look on the weird man's face, and tears flowed from her eyes. "Why? Why did you hurt my senior brother? We don't know you at all and have no enmity with you. Why do you want to hurt someone?" Junior sister yelled at the weirdo, but was pulled back by Ling Chenfeng. "Junior sister, stop talking and run. Run." Junior sister walked into the Jianghu for the first time. She didn't know that the Jianghu was dangerous, but Ling Chenfeng knew it clearly. The Jianghu is unreasonable, only about strength. In this Jianghu where the jungle is strong, as long as you are strong enough, you can fight whoever you want. Kill whoever you want. Why are there so many? What's wrong with strangers? What's wrong with no grievances? I kill you just because you are weak, and it has nothing to do with you. Just like you trample someone to death while walking. And, do you care what ants think? The world is so cruel. Brother Wuming, please save my little junior sister. She is new to the world and doesn't understand anything yet. Ling Chenfeng looked at Xiao Wuji next to him and cried out for help. The younger junior sister also nodded repeatedly and said to the weird man in a tearful tone, "He is the person you want to kill. Just kill him. Don't kill my senior brother." As soon as these words came out, Ling Chenfeng was so depressed that he wanted to vomit blood. "I begged others to save you, but you asked others to kill him. What's going on?" For the first time, Ling Chenfeng felt that his little junior sister was not thinking right. Okay, that's too deceptive. He was seriously injured due to Xiao Wuji's involvement, and now he is facing a desperate situation. 107 It is impossible not to resent Xiao Wuji. But these words cannot be said openly, as that would not be unreasonable. Are they enmity with Xiao Wuji? Now their only way to survive is Xiao Wuji. If they anger Xiao Wuji and cause Xiao Wuji to stand aside, then they will really be dead tonight. Brother Wuming, my junior sister is young and ignorant, and I hope you won't take it to heart. She was just being honest, but she didn't mean any harm. Ling Chenfeng looked at Xiao Wuji with a look of pleading. But at this moment, the weird man seemed a little impatient and raised his hand to strike out. What nonsense are you spouting? Die early and be born early. It is your honor to die in my hands. The huge skull carried the cry of ghosts and flew towards Ling Chenfeng and his junior sister. Ling Chenfeng protected his junior sister behind him, using his chest to receive the killing move, with a look of despair on his face. Although these two people were young, but the relationship between brothers and sisters is quite good. Death is the most powerful test of people's hearts. In the face of death, it is normal for husbands and wives to turn against each other, fathers and sons to kill each other, masters and apprentices to sever ties, and brothers to betray each other. But Ling Chenfeng he was able to protect his junior sister with his life, and that junior sister never left Ling Chenfeng and escaped without leaving the seriously injured Ling Chenfeng. This actually made Xiao Wuji look at them highly. They are worthy of being disciples of the Wuxia sect. There is really nothing to say about their character. Although one of them is weak and the other has a flaw in his brain, they are not hopeless. So Xiao Wuji took action. After all, these two people were also implicated by him. If they can't be saved, it's hard to say. Of course, if you can save it, you must save it. Xiao Wuji can't do it yet and watch innocent people die in front of him. Kang. There is a sudden sound of a knife, and the light of the knife suddenly appears like a lightning silver shuttle. The light of the knife shoots away, the skull transformed by the true essence was split into pieces. Ling Chenfeng and the two people who were reborn after the disaster were sweating profusely and breathed a sigh of relief. The little junior sister with a flawed brain finally exerted her only little effect. She grabbed the seriously injured Ling Chenfeng and hid behind Xiao Wuji. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Martial arts, become invincible starting from the full level magic system. Author, drunk in March at Westlake. Chapter 96. In the ruined temple, Xiao Wu looked at the weird man with the snow drinking knife in his hand, and sneered, what kind of master do I think I am? I am so elusive, it turns out to be the ghost Shura Xing Chuke. No wonder he likes sleeping in coffins and keeping company with the dead. Aren't you already dead? Ghost Shura punishes Chuk. Hearing Xiao Wuji exposed the identity of the weirdo, Ling Chenfeng suddenly looked horrified. Only the junior sister still looked ignorant. Although this name has disappeared for 10 years, Ling Chenfeng is now it still sounds like thunder. 11 years ago, a master of an evil sect appeared in the world. He killed people, refined corpses, and even stole the bodies of deceased seniors from various sects. The man called himself Ghost Shura, causing a bloody storm in the world. Later, the behavior of Ghost Azura angered too many martial arts sects, and finally led to a crusade from the martial arts masters. Legend has it that Ghost Azura was suppressed by a senior monk from the Liangchan temple of Buddhism 10 years ago, and his body and soul were already destroyed. In the next 10 years, Ghost Shura disappeared completely, and everyone in the world thought Ghost Shura was dead. Who never expected that not only was he not dead, but he would also appear here today. GGG, I have cultivated my ghost body and am immortal. How can a bald donkey from 2 Zen temples kill me? Ghost Shura grinned ferociously at Xiao Wuji, revealing his dark teeth, which was disgusting. Was it Li Wenbo who saved you? Xiao Wuji had no expression on his face and looked at Ghost Shura and said calmly. You. Ghost Shura's expression changed, and the evil smile suddenly froze on his face. You talk about immortality. If you were truly immortal, you wouldn't have disappeared for 10 years. Do you think these 10 years have been difficult for you? As a rat in the gutter, a corpse in a coffin, never to see the light of day. How can you have the face to call yourself Ghost Shura now? You are nothing but a dog with a broken spine. Shut up. Huangkao kid, what do you know? Ghost Shura was furious. Xiao Wuji's words were so heart-wrenching, every word was like a knife, piercing his heart. Indeed, as Xiao Wuji said, 10 years ago he was raped by a man from Liangchan Temple. The eminent monk chased him with no way to heaven and no way to the earth. But Li Wenbo saved people at a price. The price for saving Ghost Shura was to let Ghost Shura be his dog. Facing Li Wenbo, Ghost Shura had no choice but to bow his head and obey orders. For 10 years, Goi Shura was not without resentment, but he did not dare to betray. Li Wenbo had too many masters. Once he betrayed Li Wenbo, no matter how big the world was, Goi Shura had nowhere to escape. The scars in his heart were exposed by Xiao Wuji, and Goi Shura was angry. His thoughts erupted and his murderous aura surged. Xiao Wuji, you are indeed arrogant, but arrogant people are often short-lived ghosts. If you fall into my hands today, it's your time to die. Take your life. Skull handprint. The furious Ghost Shura gathered all his true energy, flew up, and struck out with one palm. The true energy turned into Gang Qi, forming a huge palm and struck Xiao Wuji. If you look carefully, you can find that the huge palm is made of countless. It was made up of 2 ferocious skulls. The moment the giant palm appeared, the sound of howling ghosts sounded from all directions, and the sinister wind burst out. The small general temple was instantly reduced to a ghostly ghostland. Facing the incoming killing move, Xiao Wuji did not dodge, but slowly pulled out the snow-drinking knife. The moment the snow-drinking knife was unsheathed, endless cold air burst out, sweeping inside and outside the surrounding area. The surrounding yin qi was immediately dispersed, and the cries and howls of the fierce ghosts also disappeared. Suppressed, stopped abruptly. I dare to kill gods and Buddhas, let alone a mere ghost. Kill the god with one strike. Xiao Wuji swung his sword and fell, and the world suddenly fell silent. The strong wind outside the general temple suddenly stopped, the heavy rain stopped, and even the lightning disappeared. It was as if even the god of thunder in the sky was frightened by Xiao Wuji's sword and did not dare to come out to show off his power again. The sword light rose in the wind, and instantly turned into a 40-meter huge sword energy, which struck hard on the big skeleton handprint. There was a loud bang, and the big skeleton handprint exploded. The powerful burst of true energy spread out and rushed in all directions. Impossible. Seeing his strongest killing move being broken, Ghost Shura looked horrified and roared in disbelief. He didn't believe that his strongest move was defeated by Xiao Wuji casually. His relaxed and carefree look was like eating. It's as simple as drinking water. However, there is no time for him to think at this moment, because the sword light has fallen. There is a clang of the sword, and the 40-meter huge sword energy crushes the Ghost Shura's body, like a train running over an insect. There was no stop at all. The sword light continued to castrate, smashing the statue of the general behind Ghost Shura, 7 or 8 coffins, and the back wall of the general temple. Ling Chenfeng and his junior sister were blown away by the aftermath of the true energy. He fell heavily to the side. When they opened their eyes again, they saw Xiao Wuji putting his sword back into its sheath. And under his feet in front of him was a huge knife mark more than 40 meters long and several inches deep. The general temple had been destroyed. It was split in half, and the Ghost Shura's body had long since been destroyed by the sword's energy, and there was no trace left. It is your honor to die under the sword of the killing god. Xiao Wuji put away his sword and stood up, exuding the aura of a strong man, which was intimidating. Although the name of Ghost Shura is famous, his strength is only like this, only slightly stronger than the iron claw-flying eagle among the 7 evils of Mobei. Such a guy, naturally couldn't stop Xiao Wuji's killing sword. Xiao Wuji only used 5 powers, which was enough to chop him to pieces. Good, so strong. This person is so powerful. Ling Chenfeng's eyes were dumbfounded at this moment, his mind was blank, and his ears were buzzing. He didn't expect that Xiao Wuji, who looked so young, actually had extraordinary martial arts. The notorious Ghost Shura Xing Chuke, he couldn't even sustain a single move under Xiao Wuji's sword, and his body and soul were destroyed. Judging from his strength, he was actually 3 points more powerful than his master. The little junior sister was also frightened at this moment, sitting on the ground dully. What happened tonight broke her 3 views, and made her realize for the first time that the world is so cruel. There are also endless masters. She is Invincible at that time, when she broke through the innateness, she was complacent and thought she was a martial arts genius. Only today did she realize that she was just a frog in the well. At this moment, the electronic sound of the system sounded in Xiao Wuji's mind. Ding, the host triggers the mission, blood for blood. It is detected that the host has been assassinated. The mastermind behind the scenes is Li Wenbo, the chief minister of the dynasty, and asks the host to kill him. Mission reward, return to the sect with 10,000 swords at full level. Finally it was the old man's turn. Listening to the electronic sound of the system, Xiao Wuji's eyes flashed with cold light, and his murderous intent was revealed. Xiao Wuji must kill that old man Li Wenbo. The Li family sent people to kill him again and again. If he didn't kill everyone in his family, how could Xiao Wuji give up? It's just that the matter of killing Li Wenbo still needs to be figured out slowly. Li Wenbo is different from Li Lin, killing him is not that easy. The murderous intention emanates from Xiao Wuji, making the surrounding people the temperature dropped sharply. Ling Chenfeng and his junior sister couldn't help but shiver a few times. Their eyes were full of fear when they looked at Xiao Wuji. Xiao, brother Xiao, what's wrong with you? Hearing the roar of Ghost Shura, Ling Chenfeng of course knew Xiao Wuji's real name at this moment. Seeing Xiao Wuji's renewed murderous intention at this moment, he couldn't help but be a little scared. Ghost Shura was already dead, so what kind of murderous intent was there? He wanted to kill who? Could it be me and junior sister? He doesn't want to kill people and silence them, right? Ling Chenfeng can't let him think too much. He really doesn't understand Xiao Wuji. There is no doubt that Ghost Shura is an evil person from the evil sect. But Xiao Wuji may not be a good person. At this moment, Ling Chenfeng was seriously injured, and the junior sister was a fool. If Xiao Wuji really had murderous intentions, they would have no way to survive. Xiao Wuji turned to look at Ling Chenfeng and restrained himself. Murderously said, "Don't worry, I'm not an evil demon who kills without blinking an eye. I won't kill you." Ling Chenfeng breathed a sigh of relief when he heard this and said, "That's good, that's good. When you look at Brother Xiao's handsome appearance, extraordinary martial prowess, and righteousness, you will know that Brother Xiao is a chivalrous person, and he is definitely not someone who kills innocent people indiscriminately. Thank you so much, Brother Xiao, for helping me tonight. I can't repay you for saving my life. If I'm asked to do anything in the future, I'll be very embarrassed and will not hesitate to do anything." Xiao Wuji smiled and said, "Don't you resent me for causing you trouble, Ling?" Chenfeng smiled bitterly and said, "Walking around in the world, life is likely to be unsatisfactory. It is inevitable that you will suffer unreasonable disasters by chance. It's impossible not to be resentful, but after seeing Brother Xiao's strength, I really don't dare to be resentful. Besides, Brother Xiao has warned me in advance that I might be in danger tonight, but I'm just not as good as others." Ling Chenfeng is very self-aware. When he saw with his own eyes the sword that Xiao Wuji used to kill the Ghost Shura, he was almost scared out of his wits. That was a level that he could never catch up to after practicing swordsmanship all his life. How could he dare to harbor resentment? Can he do it tonight? You are lucky to be alive. If you don't know how to appreciate others, you are really asking for your own death. Cough. 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 Suddenly, Ling Chenfeng's face turned pale, and he spat out a mouthful of blood again, making his face even paler. Senior brother, how are you? Senior brother, don't die." The little junior sister was so worried when she saw the half-dead look of her senior brother. Tears rolled down her face and she shook Ling Chenfeng vigorously. Xiao Wuji's mouth twitched when he saw it. This junior sister is indeed, Zhao, with something wrong in her head. Just shake him like this, damn it, Ling Chenfeng will be shaken to death by her even if he doesn't die. Don't, stop shaking it, junior sister. Ling Chenfeng was about to cry but had no tears, and said intermittently, quickly take out the snow ginseng white dew pills and give them to me. If you shake them again, senior brother will really die. Oh, I get it. After taking the elixir, Ling Chenfeng's injury finally stabilized, and his complexion finally softened a little. After exhaling a breath of turbidity, Ling Chenfeng finally recovered, and then sat down cross-legged, doing exercises to heal the injury. Xiao Wuji also no longer paying attention to them, he sat on the ground and closed his eyes to rest. Although the general temple was split open by Xiao Wuji, the storm had stopped at this moment, and it didn't matter even if there were no tiles above his head. There was no words in the night, and the sky in the distance was illuminated by a ray of sunshine. Tearing, the sky finally got bright. Xiao Wuji suddenly opened his eyes, startling the little junior sister who was watching the night, and hid behind Ling Chenfeng in fear. Ling Chenfeng, after a night of adjusting his breathing, his injury improved a bit. Although the serious injury has not healed, at least his life is safe. Xiao Wuji glanced at them, without speaking, walked out of the general temple directly, mounted his horse and left. Seeing Xiao Wuji's back completely disappeared, the junior sister finally relaxed. Breath. The night she spent with Xiao Wuji, she didn't dare to breathe, for fear that the sound of her heart beating would disturb Xiao Wuji. Martial Arts, Become Invincible starting from the full-level magic system. Author, Drunk in March at Westlake. Chapter 97. Senior brother, let's go back to the section. The world is too dangerous. The junior sister said with a sad face. Before she came out, she still yearned for Jianghu. She hoped that one day, she could become a female warrior in Jianghu, act chivalrously and eliminate harm for the people. But yesterday's battle completely dispelled her expectations for Jianghu. The cruelty of Jianghu is far beyond her imagination. It turns out that Jianghu is such a jungle. If you are weak, you can't even save your life. If a person wants to kill you, he doesn't even need a reason, just because you are too weak. Okay, let's go back. Ling Chenfeng knew that the younger junior sister had been hit and had inner demons. If this inner demon is not eliminated, she will not be able to improve in her martial arts realm in this life. Continuing to travel around the world and practice has no effect. In addition, he himself suffered. If you are seriously injured, you must return to the sect for healing as soon as possible. If you drag your seriously injured body, you may be killed by Jianghu Xiao if you can't go far. In fact, although this Jianghu is cruel, it is not so cruel that it is difficult to move even an inch. You can only. It's no wonder that Ling Chenfeng and the two were unlucky, but they happened to run into Xiao Wuji and were implicated. Otherwise, with their two innate masters, they would still be able to make a name for themselves in the world. Junior sister, senior brother has something you don't know whether to say or not. Senior brother, if you have anything to say, just say it directly. Why are you being polite to your junior sister? Then senior brother just said it directly. Tell me quickly. Junior sister, why don't you go back and change your brain? It's too stupid, and you look a little bit not very smart. You won't need such a brain when you walk in the world in the future. Senior brother, you are bullying people. What's wrong with me? You always criticize me, but most of the time I am very witty. 27. Haha, junior sister, just be happy. About 2 hours after Xiao Wuji and Ling Chenfeng left, 3 more figures appeared in the dilapidated general temple. They gathered around, looking at the deep knife marks on the ground, with solemn expressions, and said no words. After a long time, one of them spoke, Let's take a step later. Ghost Shura is already dead. Killed with one sword, no bones left. What a powerful swordsmanship. The other person reached out and touched the knife marks on the ground, and felt a stinging pain in his fingers. The remaining knife intention on it made him secretly frightened. He said, even if I come to take this knife, I may not be able to take it. The third person wondered, why did Ghost Shura fail? Isn't Xiao Wuji alone on this journey? Is it possible that the guardian behind him has been following him secretly? The first person responded, according to the information sent back by the informants along the way, Xiao Wuji is indeed a person, but it is also possible that the protector is so good at hiding that they cannot find him. The second person said, actually, there is another possibility that we have ignored, that is, this knife was cut by Xiao Wuji himself, not by the guardian. This is impossible, he definitely does not have such strength. The other two people couldn't believe it. Even if Xiao Wuji obtained the inheritance of a great master, his martial arts realm would not be able to improve so quickly unless it was an initiation. The third person said in an affirmative tone. Initiation is when a strong person above the master level pours his lifelong skills into another person. Although doing so can make the recipient's internal skills improve by leaps and bounds, he himself will also be exhausted due to his own skills, and died tragically on the spot. Moreover, skill initiation cannot be done casually. The two people must have similar physiques and have learned the same exercises. If the physical difference is too large, then the skills gained from the initiation will not be fully compatible, and will be harmful rather than helpful. If the skills are different, the skills obtained through the initiation will be completely exclusive from the original skills, causing the recipient to go crazy and die of madness. Moreover, after the initiation, the skills may not be fully integrated, and most of them will be wasted during the integration process. The gain outweighs the loss. In short, there are many conditions for skill initiation. And if the skill comes too quickly, the inheritor will inevitably become arrogant and lose himself, which is not conducive to mental cultivation. Although it is beneficial in the short term, in the long run, it will do more harm than good. Therefore, unless it is a last resort, few strong people will cultivate successors through initiation. Skills are best obtained through self-cultivation. No matter what, Ghost Shura is dead, we have to continue his mission. Now that I am alerting the snake, I am afraid that Xiao Wuji will be more cautious in the future, and we will not be able to succeed so easily. Send a message and tell the people behind you not to act alone. We will catch up as soon as possible. This time, the order was personally given by the chief assistant. If it fails, we cannot afford the consequences. When they thought of the consequences of the failure of the mission, the three of them couldn't help but shudder. Xiao Wuji galloped on his horse, covering more than 150 miles in half a day. When they came to a small forest, Xiao Wuji felt it again, the murderous intention in the dark. The coldness surrounding it, straight up. Did it come so quickly this time? Xiao Wuji was a little surprised. After all, only half a day had passed since the last wave of assassinations. Xiao Wuji rode his horse as if nothing had happened, but with his six senses fully open, he was always paying attention to every move around him. On a big tree, with the help of there was a figure hiding among the lush leaves. Through the leaves, the man's eyes were staring at Xiao Wuji below. The empty door on Xiao Wuji's back was facing him, looking defenseless. This was supposed to be his best chance to take action. If he takes action at this moment, he will definitely hit the target with one blow. But this man hesitated. There was a voice in the dark telling him that as long as he dared to take action, he would die without a burial place. So, this killer was very careful and patient, and continued to wait for the opportunity. But as his eyes blurred, he looked again with wide eyes, only to find that the horse was empty. There was no one. Xiao Wuji disappeared unexpectedly. Where are people? The killer was shocked. But at this moment, A cold voice suddenly sounded behind him. "What are you looking for?" The hair on the killer's hair stood on end. Without a moment's hesitation, he slashed behind him with a backhand knife. This knife came quickly and accurately, as if he had practiced it thousands of times, and there was no flaw in the angle and strength. But he was fast, and Xiao Wuji was faster than him. Lingzi pointed out, flicked the back of his finger, and flicked the blade away. Then he pointed the sword forward and hit the killer's back with one finger. After receiving this heavy blow, the killer's body bent into an arch shape, he looked up to the sky and vomited blood, and his body fell forward. He came out and fell heavily from the top of the big tree. Before he hit the ground, the killer was already dead. Xiao Wuji followed closely and fell. The moment he landed, two sharp blades broke out of the ground and plunged straight into the ground. Xiao Wuji's feet were filled with springs. With Xiao Wuji's lightness skills, it was not difficult to evade this sudden assassination. However, Xiao Wuji did not dodge, but stepped down hard with both feet. There was a crisp sound, and the two blades responded. It broke, and Xiao Wuji's feet sank 3 feet into the ground. The powerful true energy penetrated deep into the earth, making the surrounding ground surge like water waves. Only 2 painful groans were heard, and the 2 killers hidden underground became silent again. Boom boom boom. The killers came one after another. As soon as the 2 killers were trampled to death, the surrounding ground exploded, and 6 more people broke out of the ground, killing Xiao Wuji from 6 directions. But these 6 in Xiao Wuji's eyes, people's speed is like a turtle crawling, too slow to be ridiculous. Xiao Wuji can see that these people are very weak, only at the innate realm. And judging from the strength of the true energy, the strongest ones are only in the late innate stage. These people were not even qualified to let him draw the sword. Xiao Wuji put his fingers together to form sword fingers, used Lingzi's finger, and stabbed into the air 6 times in an instant. He didn't even see Xiao Wuji's movements clearly. The attack was over. The powerful finger force shot out of the air, several times more powerful than the quartz chi breaking light feather arrows. The bodies of the 6 killers paused in mid-air, and then their eyebrows exploded. A ball of blood. The blood was flying in the sky, stirring in the wind, and the scenery was beautiful. By the time they landed, the 6 killers had become 6 corpses. That's it? Is this also sent by Li Wenbo? Xiao Wuji looked at the 7 corpses around him with some doubts in his heart. These people were really too weak, and they didn't look like the men sent by Li Wenbo at all. It stands to reason that after Li Wenbo knew the strength that Xiao Wuji had shown so far, at least he will also send out master-level masters. He must know that innate masters are just cannon fodder in front of Xiao Wuji, and no matter how many they come, they will not be enough for him to kill. This is not like Li Wenbo's style of doing things. With doubts, Xiao Wuji stepped forward and searched several corpses. Except for a few banknotes and some broken silver, he found nothing. What's this? At this time, Xiao Wuji made a new discovery. He took out a piece of paper from the arms of the last corpse. When he opened it, it turned out to be a reward order, and on it was a portrait of Xiao Wuji. The portrait was very similar to Xiao Wuji himself. They are similar, at least 9 points alike, which proves that the person in the portrait has extremely high painting skills. Under the portrait, there is a reward, which is a full 500,000 taels of silver. Surrounding the portrait, there are 7 big bloody killer character. Kishalu. Why are they even involved? How could Xiao Wuji not recognize the reward order of the 7 Kills Tower? The 7 Kills Tower is the #1 killer organization in the Great Zhou dynasty. It has a mysterious origin and an unknown leader. It is said that it has been passed down for hundreds of years. When the Shangguan clan ruled the world, the 7 Kills Tower, the Killing Tower, has already existed. Inside the 7 Killing Tower, there are 4 levels of killers: gold, silver, bronze, and iron. As long as the money is in place, no one dares to kill, even the emperor. The 7-killing tower did once he has assassinated the royal family. When the Shangguan clan was defeated and lost the world's artifacts, and the great Zhou dynasty was first established, the remnants of the previous royal family paid for the assassins of the Kishalu to assassinate the royal children of the Xia family. Under the crazy assassination of the Kishalu, the children of the royal family of the Zhou dynasty, there were many casualties, which finally made Taizhu of the great Zhou dynasty furious, and ordered his subordinates to lead an army to attack Kishalu. The Jianghu sect could not compete with the imperial court after all. In that battle, Kishalu suffered heavy casualties, and all the killers in the sect were killed and injured, and their vitality was seriously damaged. Kishalu had no choice but to retreat and hide in the world, and did not dare to reappear until 50 years later. Over the years, Kishalu has gradually recovered its vitality and has regained the throne of the #1 killer organization in the Great Zhou dynasty. Although its overall strength is not as good as there are two sects, the demonic sect and the Buddhist sect, but few forces can compete with them. Why is Kishalu targeting me? Am I so hated? Xiao Wuji frowned. He suddenly felt that the world was really full of malice towards him. The people of the demon cult wanted to kill him, the most powerful chief minister in the world wanted to kill him, and now even the #1 killer organization in the Great Zhou dynasty wanted to kill him. Martial arts, become invincible starting from the full-level magic system. Author, Drunk in March at West Lake. Chapter 98. Unknowingly, Xiao Wuji had become the enemy of everyone in the world. The demon sect, the chief assistant, and the Kishalu, which one of these three forces is not powerful and powerful? Ordinary people who are targeted by any one of these three forces will be so frightened that they cannot eat or sleep, and they will be trembling and walking on thin ice. Unfortunately for Xiao Wuji, he was pursued by three parties at the same time. There are really not many people like Xiao Wuji in Dezhou. It seems that these losers should be killers who are greedy for the reward. Seeing the reward order from Kishalu, Xiao Wuji naturally knew the identity of these killers. The reward of 500,000 taels of silver was enough to make countless killers jealous. Everyone with a discerning eye knows that Xiao Wuji can be rewarded with 500,000 taels of silver. The strength must not be weak. But I know that there are people who cannot resist the temptation of huge sums of money. Even if they know that Xiao Wuji is difficult to deal with, these innate killers still come. Who posted the reward? Are they from the demon cult? Or Li Wenbo? These two forces are the only ones who have hatred against Xiao Wuji. You don't need to guess to know that they are one of the two parties. Forget it, if the soldiers come, they will be blocked, and if the water comes, the soil will cover them. No matter who they are, as long as they dare to come, I will kill them. Xiao Wuji sneered, looked up at the sky, and threw the reward order in his hand away. The reward order flew in the air, turning into countless dust and falling in all directions. At the same time, the electronic sound of the system also sounded. Ding, the host triggers the mission, be famous in the world. It is detected that the host is being chased by the killer of Kishalu. The host just takes this opportunity to become famous in the world. Please ask the host to kill all the killers in the future without leaving anyone behind. Mission reward, full level Gigo Zongjingshu. Be famous. Kill them all. I like this task. Xiao Wuji felt heroic in his heart. After laughing 3 times, he got on his horse and rushed into the distance. In the following days, Xiao Wuji encountered several assassinations from Kishalu. Most of the people who came were their innate masters, and there is also a grand master among them. As more and more masters die in Kishalu, fewer and fewer killers appear later, and their strength is naturally getting higher and higher. On the other hand, Li Wenbo's men have never appeared. It seems that the drums died down. Xiao Wuji guessed that they should have found out that the people from Kishalu had intervened, so they were sitting on the mountain watching the tiger fight, hoping to reap the benefits. Xiao Wuji ignored them. After running all the way, he had reached Kangzhou in Tongzhou. Snow Mountain Range. Tongzhou, Kangxiu Mountain Range, Fixia Villa, Jianjianping. This is the place where disciples of Fixia Villa practice sword practice and compete. Although it is only early in the morning, the shouts and shouts of Jianjianping are already endless. A large group, the disciples of Fixia Villa, gathered together to practice Fixia sword technique at the same time. Others worked in pairs and competed with each other to see who had stronger sword skills and who had made greater progress. Fixia sword technique was 7. The fine swordsmanship is quite famous in the world. Unfortunately, after Yun Fei Yang died, no one in Fixia Villa could master the essence of Fixia swordsmanship. Moreover, in an accident many years ago, Fixia swordsmanship, the secret book, was destroyed. After that, only 36 of the 7 and 49 Fixia sword techniques were handed down, and their power was greatly reduced. Naturally, the descendants of Fixia Villa wanted to complete the ancestral sword technique secret book, but unfortunately they were not talented enough. Some of the 36 styles of Fixia swordsmanship did not have the essence. As a result, Fixia Villa continued to weaken, and finally had to abandon the martial arts business and turn to the medicinal materials business. Fortunately, Fixia Villa has some heritage, and it is backed by the Kangxiu Mountains. The location is excellent, and I slowly recovered a little bit of my strength. Unfortunately, compared with the Fixia Villa at its peak, I don't know how far it is. Look at my yin and yang move. Hey, look at my dark horse crossing the forest. What's there to be afraid of when a dark horse crosses the forest? Look at my trick of hiding flowers under the leaves. You also take advantage of my trick to rotate the sun and the moon. Look at my frosty cold moon move, one hit will kill you. Several disciples competed with each other, and they performed each move of Fixia sword technique, which was full of momentum and momentum. Occasionally, they used a sword technique to gain the upper hand, and then they were complacent and proud. Everyone was talking about it. Suddenly someone shouted, "The owner of the village is here." As soon as the words fell, all the disciples quickly dispersed, and they all held their hands and saluted the person who came with their swords. "See, owner." The person who came was a middle-aged man, wearing white clothes, with a long sword hanging from his waist. His face was stern, not angry, and he exuded a powerful aura. The person who came was clearly the current owner of Fixia Villa, Yun Po Kong. Although his name is very good and loud, and he sounds like a big shot at first glance, in fact, his strength is not very high. This name is often ridiculed in the world. I just practiced a few fake tricks and became complacent and proud. What future prospects will I have? Yun Po Kong glanced at the many disciples with cold eyes and shouted coldly, "Why don't you go back and continue practicing swordsmanship? Everyone, practice for 2 extra hours today." Ah! As soon as these words came out, there was a burst of wailing, and many disciples showed sorrow on their faces. How? Don't you want to learn? If you don't want to learn, get out of Fixia Villa as soon as possible. I don't want waste in Fixia Villa. Seeing that Yun Po Kong seemed to be really angry, many disciples no longer dared to complain, and began to concentrate on practicing swords. Yun Po Kong walked to the high platform of the sword trial platform, looked at the many sword practicing disciples below, and couldn't help shaking his head and sighing. Alas, I really wonder when my Fixia Villa will be able to regain its glory. I, Yun Po Kong, am also a waste. I am sorry for my ancestors. With Yun Po Kong's eyes, he can certainly see that none of the many disciples below are successful. It is tantamount to wishful thinking to expect them to restore the past glory of Fixia Villa. Father, you don't have to be so pessimistic. As long as we work together, we will be able to revive the reputation of Fixia Villa. Behind Yun Po Kong, a young man said. He is Yun Po Kong's eldest son, Yun Ye, and also the senior brother of many disciples of Wuxia. Yet, as a father, everything depends on you. You are more promising than your father. Yun Po Kong patted Yun Ye's shoulder and sighed. Yun Ye's talent is better than Yun Po Kong. He is 26 years old this year and has already broken through the middle stage of innateness. He has a chance to break through to the master level in this life. It is Yun Po Kong. Empty hope. Don't worry, Dad, I will definitely do it. Yun Ye's eyes were burning, as if there were flames burning in them. Since he was a child, Yun Ye has known his father's ambition, which was also his grandfather's ambition. So he vowed to revitalize Wuxia since he was a child, so that Yun Ye he practiced his sword hard and never slacked off for a day. Yun Po Kong was naturally overjoyed to see that his son was promising. If Yun Ye is given enough time, he will do better than himself, even better. But what Wuxia lacks most now is time. Father, are you worried about that? Yun Ye saw his father's sad face and couldn't help asking softly. Yun Po Kong nodded and said yes, that thing is too precious. Once it is leaked, our Wuxia may be in disaster. With our current strength, we cannot protect it. Yun Ye said, didn't my father send a message to Jin Yiwei, saying that he was willing to dedicate that thing to the emperor? Those who want to come to Jin Yiwei will arrive soon. With the support of the imperial court, those who want to come to Jianghu will not dare to take action against us. To seek refuge with the imperial court would be looked down upon by colleagues in the world, but in order to protect itself, Wuxia does not care about its mere reputation. Yun Ye continued, we have blocked the news about that matter, so no outsiders will know about it. As long as the handover with Jin Yiwei is successful, the matter will be over. Yun Po Kong raised his head and looked into the distance, and said in a deep voice, there is no airtight wall in the world. I am afraid that the news has already been leaked out. Yun Ye was about to say it was impossible, but suddenly a shrill roar came from the distance, villager owner, something happened at the foot of the mountain. As soon as these words came out, Yun Po Kong and Yun Ye's expression suddenly changed. Everyone followed the sound and saw a disciple with blood-stained clothes running up from the steps, shouting as he ran, someone forced his way into the mountain gate, second senior brother, the second senior brother and all other senior brothers have been killed. What? As soon as these words came out, many disciples were shocked. Their second senior brother was an innate intermediate master, only slightly weaker than Yun Ye, and he was actually killed? Yun Po Kong's face suddenly darkened, and his body exuded cold murderous aura. Everyone is on alert and ready to meet the enemy. Yun Po Kong raised his voice and roared, and his voice spread throughout every corner of Wuxia under the influence of Xiantian Tru Yuan. The disciples who had been panicked immediately calmed down after hearing Yun Po Kong's voice, and lined up to look outside the mountain gate. Ha 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 ha! With a burst of hearty laughter, a figure came through the air. The person came with extremely high qinggong. He swept through the air, glided 5 or 6 feet, and landed heavily on the sword testing platform. There was a loud bang, and the true essence exploded, and knocked away a dozen Wuxia disciples who were close at the same time. Yun Po Kong's face was gloomy and extremely solemn. He knew that he was in big trouble today. It seemed that the person's strength was not inferior to him just by his hand. But so many people came out to greet the poor monk. The poor monk was really honored. When the smoke and dust dissipated, everyone finally saw the person clearly. They saw that the person was wearing tattered monk robes, no shoes on his feet, and his head was bald and hairless, with only a few clear, obtained, scars. No one could have imagined that the person who came was actually a monk. 7 bitter monks. It's you. Yun Po Kong looked at the visitor and blurted out a name. Ba is a poor monk who has been worshipped by the donor for a long time. Since donor Yun knows the poor monk, it will be easier to talk to him today. Monk Kiku shouted the Buddha's name, clasped his hands in front of Yunpo Kong, and performed a Buddhist salute. Monk Kiku was polite and always had a warm smile on his face. He looked like an eminent monk who did good deeds and accumulated virtues. Virtue. But Yunpo Kong is extremely vigilant, holding a long sword in his hand and ready to fight to the death. This is because Monk Kiku is different from other monks. Monk Kiku was born in the two authentic Buddhist temples, and followed the teachings of the eminent monks of the two temples. He was supposed to be an eminent monk who would save the world and perform chivalrous acts of justice. However, one day 2 years ago, when the monk Chiku was traveling, he actually beat his fellow monks to death and betrayed the two Zen monasteries. From then on, the Seven Sufferings monk became a notorious evil monk in the world. The reason why the Dharma name is called the Seven Sufferings is because of the seven sufferings in life: birth, old age, illness, death, resentment, separation from love, and failure to seek. According to the Buddha's teachings to save the world, but the seven sufferings in life, even the Buddha can't save the world, and can't see the other side. So the monk Chi suffering found another way and walked out of his own Buddhist path, which is to achieve enlightenment through killing. Since the world is trapped in the sea of suffering and cannot be liberated, then kill. As long as people die, they don't have to suffer anymore. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Martial arts, become invincible starting from the full level magic system. Author, Drunk in March at Westlake. Chapter 99. The most common thing that Monk Kiku said is, in order to save the common people, why not kill everyone in the world? So the monk Chiku started on the road to Buddhism through killing. Therefore, Monk Kiku appears to be a monk, but in fact he is a murderous demon. Ever since Monk Kiku rebelled against Liangchan Temple, countless people have died at his hands in the past 2 years. Monk Kiku killed not only Jianghu people, but also civilians. Sometimes when I was eating noodles at a roadside stall and heard the noodle stall owner complaining that life was too difficult, the Kiku monk would rise up and kill him. From Monk Kiku's point of view, he was not killing people, but trying to save the noodle stall owner from suffering. He doesn't feel that he is doing evil, but is saving people, and his merits are immeasurable. Monk Kiku, why did you kill my disciple of Wuxia Villa for no reason? Yunpo Kong pointed his sword at Monk Kiku and shouted angrily. Hundreds of his disciples also drew their swords and pointed them at Monk Kiku. Monk Kiku faced the swords of hundreds of people, his expression was calm, and he still looked like he was saving the world. Smiling, Amitabha, the poor monk heard that the donor had obtained a 300-year-old blood ginseng. This blood ginseng is something that can cause disaster, and it is very unknown. The poor monk is dedicated to doing good, but he can't bear the death of hundreds of people in Wuxia Villa because of this thing, so he came here to take it away and save the lives of all the donors. Monk Kiku said it as if he was compassionate, but there was a hint of murderous intent in his words. The implication of this was that if Yunpo Kong didn't hand over the bleeding ginseng, he would kill everyone in Wuxia Villa, and not a single one of them would be killed. Keep. I've never gotten any blood ginseng from Wuxia Villa. You've come to the wrong place. He has informed Jin Yiwei about the bloody ginseng and said that he wanted to present it to the emperor. How can he take it out at this time? If he handed over the bloody ginseng at this moment, he would be able to make Monk Kiku retreat and save everyone's lives. But when Jin Yiwei arrives, he will not be able to take it. Bleeding ginseng is the crime of deceiving the emperor. If he commits the crime of deceiving the emperor, he will still be punished by everyone in Wuxia Villa. Amitabha, monks do not lie, but the donor deceives the poor monks. This is not what a gentleman does. It seems that donor Yun doesn't want to hand over 563 blood ginseng, which is a pity. Monk Kiku shook his head, closed his eyes and sighed, with a look of regret and helplessness on his face. But then he suddenly opened his eyes, and Monk Kiku's expression changed, becoming murderous and ferocious. There are 7 sufferings in life, and the world is ignorant. Only poor monks can help you escape from the sea of suffering and go to the Western paradise. Amitabha. As soon as the Buddha's chant fell, monk Kiku took action brazenly. With one palm strike, the 2 Wuxia disciples in front suddenly burst into pieces, and their flesh and blood flew everywhere. Several disciples next to him were unable to dodge and were splashed with blood. Stop! Yun Po Kong roared angrily, and flew towards monk Kiku with his sword. With one move, the hidden flower on the bottom of the leaf stabbed monk Kiku's eyebrows, but monk Kiku blocked it with his flesh palm. Yun Po Kong made an instant killing move, one move of black horse crossing the forest slashed at monk Kiku's neck, and then another move of yin and yang stabbed monk Kiku in the chest, but monk Kiku blocked them with his body. Every time the sword blade fell, the sound of gold and iron was heard. With the sound of the sound, sparks flew everywhere. Yun Po Kong is a master at the peak level of Xiantian. His Xiantian Yuan is very powerful. The Wuxia sword technique has the power to split mountains and rocks, destroy gold and jade. But such sword moves cannot break through the 7 sufferings. Monk's fur. It's useless, Donor Yun, you can't break through the poor monk's golden body defense. Monk Chi Ku slapped Yun Po Kong's sword blade with his palm, sending it flying several feet away. Monk Chi Ku was practicing the Buddhist golden bell guard, and he had reached the highest level of being invulnerable to swords and guns, water and fire, and there was no place on his body. Cover the door. Of course monk Kiku has not reached the highest level of cultivation at present, but even so, Yun Po Kong's sword cannot hurt him. Amitabha, it is not too late for Donor Yun to change his mind now. Monk Chi Ku put his hands together and chanted the Buddha's name softly. You bald donkey, don't be so arrogant. If I say no, I mean no. The disciple was killed. Yun Po Kong was extremely angry and resentful at this moment. How could he be in the mood to talk nonsense with monk Kiku again? He immediately swung his sword to attack monk Kiku. Father, let me help you. Yun Ye on the side saw that his father was unable to attack for a long time, so he wanted to step forward to help. But at this moment, a sword light appeared out of thin air and passed through everyone's eyes in an instant. Several disciples had no time to react and were cut instantly. He died from his throat. Several heads rose into the sky, and blood spilled on the ground. The sword light turned a corner, and finally flew straight towards Yun Ye. Young owner, be careful. Senior brother, be careful. Get out of the way. Many disciples screamed and roared, and Yun Ye naturally did not dare to take it lightly. It was impossible to hide. The sword light was too fast. It was too late to dodge at this time, so he could only catch it forcefully. Yun Ye unsheathed his sword and faced it. The sword light stabbed out, and it was the Hanmei Shuang Shui in Wuxia's swordsmanship. The sword thrust out, the cold air was overwhelming, and the surrounding temperature dropped sharply. When the 2 swords collided, only a clanking sound was heard, and Yun Ye retreated continuously. After retreating for more than 10 steps, they finally stopped. Everyone took a closer look and found that the person coming was a middle-aged man with disheveled hair, wearing shabby linen clothes, and full of anger. Liangda, it's you. How dare you come to my Wuxia villa? Seeing this man, Yun Ye's face changed, murderous intent was revealed in his eyes, and anger erupted in his heart. After seeing Liangda, all the disciples of Wuxia villa showed a fierce look in their eyes, with murderous intent. The person who came was none other than Fei. An old acquaintance of Snow Mountain Villa, or an old enemy. The Kangxia mountain range spans several states and stretches for tens of thousands of miles. I don't know how many forces survive on it. In Tongzhou, Wuxia Villa is certainly not the only force that relies on the Kangxia mountain range. 1. To the southeast of Wuxia Villa, over 2 hills, there is a medicine hall called Baikatang. It is said to be a medicine hall, but it is actually a village. People in the village make a living by collecting herbs. But Katang is different from other herb collectors. While they are in the business of collecting herbs, they also engage in forced buying and selling, and even killing people and selling goods. In short, as long as they have money, the people in Katang will do anything. This Liangda is Katang. The leader of the thatched cottage is only slightly weaker than Yun Po Kong. Katang and Wuxia Villa live next to each other. There is a conflict of interest between the two parties. Over time, they will naturally form a big feud. Wuxia Villa has killed people from Katang, and Katang has the people in the cottage also killed the people in Wuxia Villa, but no one could do anything to anyone. Although Wuxia Villa has declined, its heritage is still there, and it has always had the upper hand in the conflicts between the two sides. In normal times, Liangda would never dare to break into Wuxia Villa. But the situation today, is obviously different. Wuxia Villa is about to be in disaster. How can Liangda give up this great opportunity? Liangda, how dare you break into my Wuxia Villa alone? You can't even think of leaving alive today. All the disciples obey the order and kill the invading enemies. Yunya roared angrily, and immediately flew towards Liangda. He swung his sword and slashed, and a blast of frosty sword energy hit Liang Daxiang's head. The disciples of Wuxia Villa behind him also swarmed up and killed Liangda. Liangda saw Yunya. He came and sneered disdainfully, "I'm not afraid of your father, let alone you little brat, get out of here." Liangda also uses a sword. Although his swordsmanship is not as exquisite as Wuxia's swordsmanship, he has profound internal skills. He swung his sword horizontally and chopped Yunya's sword energy into pieces, and then thrust out a counter-attack with his sword. It penetrated directly into Yunya's lower abdomen. Yunya blocked with his sword, dodged the killing move, and then retreated continuously. Liangda tapped his toes, flew towards Yunya, attacked suddenly, and launched a set of combos, catching Yunya off guard. Several times several Wuxia Villa disciples came forward to help, but they were all killed by Liangda with one sword. A group of warriors who were not even innate were nothing more than cannon fodder in front of Liangda. "Boy, you are no match for me, today is the day you die. Also, who told you that I came alone?" Liangda smiled ferociously, and as soon as he finished speaking, he heard a cry of killing. 30 or 40 men in shabby linen clothes broke in from the mountain gate and fought to the sword testing ground. They were obviously from Baiko Hall. Upon seeing this, the disciples of Wuxia Villa hurriedly stepped forward to fight with the disciples of Baiko Hall. The two sides already had a blood feud, and now you are coming and going, and they are already red-eyed in an instant. Liangda, you deserve to die. Yun Po Kong and Yunya, father and son, saw this. Yun Po Kong wanted to kill Liangda, his old enemy, immediately, but Monk Kiku kept dragging him, leaving him unable to do anything. Although Yunya was extremely angry at the moment, he is no match for Liangda at all and has fallen completely at a disadvantage. GGG, the clouds break through the sky, Wuxia Villa will never be the same from today on. The sword light stammered, blood spurted out, and it almost disemboweled Yunya. Yunya screamed, shot backwards, and vomited blood in mid-air. He was already seriously injured. Yeah. When Yun Po Kong saw his son being injured, he immediately let out a roar and hurriedly killed Liangda in an attempt to save his son. But how could Monk Kiku let him escape? Ba, Donor Yun, please stay. Monk Kiku recited the Buddha's name softly, with a kind look on his face and a smile, but he was merciless. Seeing Yun Po Kong exposing his back and facing him, he was not polite at all. He immediately used his full strength and slapped it with a palm. Yun Po Kong's back hard. There was a loud bang, and blood spurted out from Yun Po Kong's mouth and nose on the spot. He flew out heavily, and the sword in his hand also came out. Ahem, cough, cough. Yun Po Kong fell to the ground miserably, and vomited out again a few mouthfuls of blood. His face was as pale as paper, and he was already seriously injured. Ba, donor Yun, please hand over the bloody ginseng. As long as the benefactor Yun agreed to the poor monk's request, the poor monk turned around and left. Even the poor monk was able to help benefactor Yun save his son. Monk Chi Ku put his hands together and smiled at Yun Po Kong. On the other side, Liangda had also taken down Yun Ye. The long sword was placed on Yun Ye's neck, and he could take away Yun Ye with just a little force in his hand. Yes, life. Yun Po Kong, you lost. Didn't you expect that? You were finally defeated by me, Liangda. Ha 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 ha. Liangda looked at Yun Po Kong and laughed wildly, with no concealment of pride on his face. Who would have thought that Wuxia Villa, which has been inherited for almost 200 years, would eventually be defeated by Liangda? After today, Liangda will definitely become famous in the world. Go to hell. Liangda's eyes flashed with joy, he smiled ferociously at Yun Po Kong, and immediately swung his sword to slash Yun Ye's neck. As long as the sword fell, Yu Ye would be cut into 2 parts, and he would die without a whole body. Don't want. Yun Po Kong's eyes were bursting with tears and he roared in anger. But at this moment, he was seriously injured and could not move. He could only watch Liangda kill his son. Phew. Just at the critical moment, there was a sharp roar. There was a sudden sound. I saw a wisp of cold light blooming, like a meteor flying by. It instantly penetrated Liangda's temple and brought up a ball of blood. Martial arts, become invincible starting from the full-level magic system. Author, Drunk in March at West Lake. Chapter 100. With a clang, the sword fell to the ground. Liangda knelt on his knees, the proud and arrogant look still remained on his face, but his eyes had lost their vitality at this moment. With a pop, Liangda fell heavily to the ground head first and completely stopped breathing. Who is it? The sudden change startled Monk Kiku, and he quickly turned his head to look at the direction from which the hidden weapon was shooting. Yun Po Kong was also stunned for a moment, but he was ecstatic in his heart, thinking that Jin Yiwei's reinforcements had arrived. However, when he seeing the face of the visitor clearly, my heart suddenly fell into the ice cellar. Because the person who came was not a Jin Yiwei, but a man wearing a ghost-faced mask. Seeing Liangda being killed by the ghost-faced man, several members of the Baiko Hall immediately shouted for beating. He shouted to kill, wanting to avenge Liangda. But the ghost-faced man didn't even look at the ants. He just flicked his sleeves and robes and knocked away the dozens of people who rushed up. Those men flew backwards, vomited blood in mid-air, and landed on the ground. After that, they all died. The remaining members of Baikatang did not dare to stay anymore. They were so frightened that they turned into birds and beasts and fled in all directions. Ba, who is the donor? Sneak attacks from behind are not considered heroic. Monk Kiku looked at the ghost-faced man with a solemn face and said. But who knew that the ghost-faced man didn't want to pay attention to Monk Kiku at all, but turned his eyes to Yun Po Kong and said neatly, I save your son's life, you save his life. Leave the blood ginseng to me. You and I owe nothing to each other. It should be fair, right? Unfair. Before Monk Kiku spoke, another voice came from a distance. This time it was a group of young people who came from the same sect. The young disciples were all dressed in white, handsome in appearance, and holding long swords. Sword. There was a look of arrogance on their faces. They always raised their chins when looking at people, and their eyes were superior to others. A dozen young disciples fell into the sword testing ground. The leader looked at the ghost-faced man and said righteously, hold on, repaying kindness is not something a chivalrous person would do. Although you saved Mr. Yun Ye just now, you still can't change your despicable heart of coveting blood ginseng. So this deal is unfair. People from Jingchan are here too, what a bad luck. Although Monk Kiku doesn't know the ghost-faced man, he knows these young disciples very well. They are all disciples of Jing Chuanyuan. Jing Chuanyuan has some relationship with Buddhism and Taoism, and it can also be regarded as one of the righteous sects. Jing Chuanyuan, the disciples also saw monk Kiku, and a trace of murderous intent emerged deep in their eyes, but it was quickly covered up. As disciples of Jindao Jing Chuanyuan, when they see a traitor like monk Kiku, of course they must kill the demon. But at this moment, a powerful enemy was on the side, and they could only aim at the mysterious ghost-faced man. The ghost-faced man had a very high profile. Even if the people from Jing Chuanyuan showed up, he did not look at them, but stared straight at them. The clouds break through the sky. Yun Po Kong, what are your thoughts? Do you want to give me the blood ginseng? Yun Po Kong saw so many masters gathered together, and his heart was already in despair. Many disciples of Wuxia Villa had their hands and feet cold at this moment, and their livers and gallbladders were split with fear. Facing these powerful enemies, they had no chance of winning. The leading disciple of Jing Chan Academy, looking at Yun Po Kong, he said, Master Yun, no matter what, our Jing Chuanyuan will ensure your safety. As righteous disciples, this is our duty. No matter who it is, no one can snatch away what belongs to Daxia Yun. What he said was sonorous and powerful, and he was full of righteousness. However, when the Kiku monk next to him heard these words, the corners of his mouth sneered with disdain, and the depths of his eyes were full of disgust and disgust. What kind of disciples are there in Jing Chuanyuan? He the clearest. To say hypocrisy is an understatement, but to say high-sounding, hypocrisy is more accurate. The disciples of Jing Chuanyuan are simply a group of outright hypocrites. Yun Po Kong looked at a few people and said, it is impossible to hand over blood ginseng to you, it has already been, it's no longer in my hands. As soon as these words came out, the Kiku monk became completely angry, his patience was completely exhausted, and he turned into an angry-eyed Vajra. You really can't shed tears until you see the coffin, you are looking for death. Before he finished speaking, monk Kiku slapped the disciples of Wuxia Villa on the side with his palm. The force of his palm swept across and beat 2 or 3 disciples into pieces, with their flesh and blood flying everywhere. Yun Po Kong's face changed greatly, and he roared angrily, stop. However, monk Kiku just pretended not to hear, and continued to kill ordinary disciples of Wuxia Villa. In the blink of an eye, more than a dozen people died under the hands of monk Kiku. The ghost-faced man turned a blind eye, put his hands behind his back, and said nothing. The people in Jing Chuanyuan, who were speaking so righteously just a second ago, stood by and watched, and no one took action to stop them. Just as monk Kiku expected, these disciples in Jing Chuanyuan are all hypocrites. What kind of righteous disciples? It was ridiculous and generous. He was obviously here for the blood ginseng, but he had to pretend to be a righteous hero. It really made him sick. Ah! With a burst of screams, the ordinary disciples of Wuxia Villa suffered heavy casualties. Very soon, there were corpses lying on the ground at the feet of the monk Chiku, and blood flowed into a river. Looking at the broken limbs and broken arms at his feet, the monk Chiku put his hands together and shouted the Buddha's name with a sad face, Amitabha, good, good, good. The poor monk didn't want to kill anyone, but the world was trapped in a sea of misery and could not be liberated. Only the poor monk sacrificed his life to become a Taoist and sent them to the paradise of paradise in the West. After that, monk Kiku smiled ferociously at Yun Po Kong. In Yun Po Kong's eyes, monk Kiku was more terrifying than the cruelest devil. The ghost-faced man also spoke at this time, Yun Po Kong, I want more stubborn. After speaking, he raised his palm and pointed it at the seriously injured Yun Ye, and said coldly, if you don't hand over the bleeding ginseng, your son will be the next to die. I can save him. Yun Po Kong stood in front of Yun Ye with his seriously injured body, and said angrily, it is impossible to hand over the blood ginseng to you. I have informed the Jinyai Wei about the blood ginseng and dedicated it to His Majesty the Emperor. The people from the Jinyai Wei are already here. On the way. If I hand over the blood ginseng to you, I, Wuxia, will be guilty of deceiving the Emperor, and my entire clan will still be exterminated. As soon as these words came out, the expressions of Monk Kiku and the disciples of Jing Chanyuan all changed, and the ghost-faced man's breathing became a little heavier. The people of Jinyue are not easy to mess with. As one of the three swords used by the imperial court to suppress the world, Jinyue is the sharpest one. There are so many powerful people in Jinyue, comparable to any sect in the world. What's more, Jinyue is the emperor's personal army. Offending Jinyue is violating the imperial power, which is a crime of great disrespect. They are the two sects of Buddhism and Taoism. And don't dare to provoke easily. He actually informed Jinyue, damn it. Monk Chiku's face was gloomy, with a cold light flashing in his eyes. He wanted to kill Yun Pokong immediately. But he was afraid of the reputation of Jinyue and did not dare to take action easily. The imperial court had long said that as long as the Jianghu sect is willing to loyal to the imperial court, the imperial court will protect them. Yun Pokong dedicating blood ginseng to the emperor is tantamount to surrendering to the imperial court, and the imperial court will protect Wuxia. If he kills Yun Pokong at this moment, the Jinyai Wei will definitely issue a sea arrest document, and in the Great Zhou dynasty he was hunted all over the country. If it were an ordinary wanted order, Monk Kiku would not be afraid. Who doesn't have a few lives in the world? Being wanted by the Jinyai Wei is not a big deal. As long as you want to escape, you can still escape. Blood ginseng is already a tribute to the royal family. Stealing the tribute is a serious crime. The wanted order must be the highest Tianzi first class. All wanted criminals of Tianzi first class will be pursued with all their strength by the Jinyai Wei. Kill until death. At that time, Monk Kiku will really have no way to go to heaven and no way to enter the earth. Afraid of the reputation of Jinyai Wei, Monk Kiku and the people in Jing Chanyuan all want to quit, but there is still one person in the scene who still refuses Buletin Rao, that is the ghost-faced man. The murderous spirit of the ghost-faced man has not subsided, and he said indifferently, others are afraid of Jinyai Wei, but I am not afraid. No matter what you say today, I will not give up. I am bound to get the blood ginseng. If you don't pay, I will massacre the whole family of Wuxia and look for it myself. After the voice fell, the ghost-faced man took action brazenly, grabbing Yun Pokong, hoping to capture him and torture him to extract a confession. Seeing that the ghost-faced man had taken action unscrupulously, Monk Kiku's face was uncertain, and the greed in his heart was aroused again. Anyway, he has already killed so many people in Wuxia and has formed a blood feud. He doesn't care about killing one or two more people. As long as he escapes in time and hides in the corner of a remote mountain village. The world is so big and the rivers and lakes are so far away, he must be the Jinyai Wei. He couldn't be found for a while. And as long as he got the blood ginseng, his skills would be further improved. At that time, the Jinyai Wei would be unable to do anything to him. Isn't the purpose of walking around the world just to practice extraordinary martial arts? At this moment, the opportunity is here. How can he cower in front of him? If he retreats today, his martial arts heart will be damaged from now on. How can he prove the way through killing and save all sentient beings? With determination in his heart, Monk Kiku also takes action boldly. Although he is later than the ghost-faced man one step, but as long as the person is not dead, he has a chance. When the time comes, you and the ghost-faced man will use their own methods. And just when Monk Kiku took action, the leading disciple of Jingchan Academy also took action. This sword strike was ruthless and showed no mercy. Although he is a disciple of the righteous path, he directly attacks and plots without any regard for face. Monk Kiku seemed to have expected this scene. He sneered and increased the internal strength in his palm by another 3 points. Presumptuous. The ghost-faced man was about to succeed, but the two people behind him came at him, forcing him to turn around and fight back. The gap in his back was wide open, which is a taboo for warriors. If he didn't withdraw his hand in time, he would be seriously injured with just one move. You two are seeking death. The ghost-faced man was furious. He bent his left foot slightly, pushed his right palm forward, and immediately struck out with a mighty palm force, forcing Monk Kiku and the Jing Chanyuan disciples back. In terms of skill, the ghost-faced man was the strongest among the three. Yes, even if they were 1 against 2, they would not lose at all. After forcing the two men back, the ghost-faced man grabbed Yun Pukong with his backhand. Yun Pukong had been seriously injured and had no power to fight back at this moment. He could only watch the killing move fall. They closed their eyes in despair and waited for death. Tisk. At this moment, there was a sudden sound of lightning and thunder. Everyone saw a bolt of lightning shooting from the sky. The lightning was extremely fast. The moment it appeared, it had already hit the palm of the ghost-faced man. There was a pop, blood spattered, and a blood hole appeared in the palm of the ghost-faced man's hand. The ghost-faced man was injured and couldn't help screaming and retreating. With a bang, lightning shot into the ground, shaking the bluestone ground with spider web cracks. Monk Kiku, the disciples of Jing Chanyuan and others took a closer look and found that the lightning was actually a stone. An ordinary stone that can be seen everywhere, but it is like the most terrifying hidden weapon in the world. In just an instant, it injured the ghost-faced man. Forced him to retreat. At the critical moment, Xiao Wuji finally arrived at 3.